Chapter 162. As night fell, the pedestrians on the road went home one after another. After a few minutes, the sky was completely dark. Thousands of lights lit up one after another. In the northeast of Chang and city, many squares were close to the imperial palace, so most of them were the residences of high-ranking officials and nobles. In the northwest of Chang and city, because it was close to the West Market, a large number of rich merchants, Persians, and other non-civilized people gathered here. Therefore, the market structure of Chang and city had always been rich in the west, rich in the east, and noble in the east. Gi Square, southwest of Chang and city. This place was far away from the bustling area, and most of it was a gathering place for poor people. In a dilapidated courtyard, a few lights were lit up. In the room, a little boy about 10 years old was holding a little girl's hand and teaching her how to write. The little girl was about 7 or 8 years old, and her face was a little yellow, obviously malnourished. She seemed to think that writing was fun, and an innocent smile appeared on her face from time to time. "How are ya? It's time to eat." A woman in coarse gray clothes came in with a bowl and said with a smile, "Oh, it's time to eat." The little girl cheered and broke free from the boy's arms. She ran to the table and looked at the food in the bowl, drooling. The boy shook his head in amusement and asked the woman, "Mother, won't father come back for dinner tonight?" The woman in gray was startled and said, "Your father is helping people unload goods on the murky river. I'm afraid he won't come back tonight. However, don't worry about that. Eat first." The little boy agreed in a low voice and quietly went back to the table to sit down. "Come, however, eat an egg. Today, when I was working at Minister Hu's house, his wife gave it to me. Eat it to nourish your brain. Maybe you could be the top scorer in the exam next year." The woman carefully peeled an egg and put it in the little boy's bowl and said lovingly. The little boy looked at the egg in the bowl and then looked at Yaya, who was drooling. He put the egg in Yaya's bowl with chopsticks and said, "Mother, I have eggs for lunch at the Imperial College. Give this egg to little sister." He thought to himself, "I must get first place in this monthly test. That way, I can bring my parents and little sister to the Drunken Immortal restaurant to have a big meal. I heard that the wine in the Drunken Immortal restaurant is called the best wine in the world. My father used to love one a long time ago, but in order to support my studies, he didn't drink anymore. I must bring my father to taste it. It's been a long time since I've eaten meat. I'm sure you like the chicken, meatballs, and braised pork from the Drunken Immortal restaurant. The dompa pork and twice-cooked pork from the Drunken Immortal restaurant would definitely like to eat them." The gray-clothed woman originally wanted to stop him, but after hearing her son's words, she could only give up. She sighed and said, "However, I heard from you yesterday that a new teacher will be coming to your academy today. What do you think? Did Mr. Xian teach well?" This little boy was Meng Wenhao from the School of Mathematics. Today in class, Lisa Xuan had called his name to do some questions on the blackboard. Meng Wenhao smiled and said, "Mother, you must know our new teacher. He's the man from Lantian County who presented the Tsuyuan plow to the imperial court a while ago. His mathematical ability is unique. He's the most knowledgeable person I've ever met." The gray-clothed woman was obviously taken aback. She said in astonishment, "So it's Li Xiannan. This person is the great benefactor of our poor family. How? You have to learn well from Li Xiannan and live up to his teachings." Meng Wenhao's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, what would Mr. Xian think if he knew that someone called him Mr. Xian? The next day, the wind was gentle and the sun was bright. "Mother, I'm going to the Imperial College." Meng Wenhao finished his breakfast and shouted to his mother, who was cleaning up the dishes in the kitchen. The woman walked out and asked, "However, didn't you say yesterday that you had a day off today? Why do you still want to go?" Meng Wenhao turned around and said, "Mother, Mr. Xian left a question yesterday. I'm going to the Imperial College to solve it today." After saying that, he turned around and ran away. The woman was puzzled. She wanted to ask, but her son had already gone far. At the Imperial College, under the ginkgo tree, next to the gate, stood a young man in blue. The young man did not move. He raised his head and stared at the top of the ginkgo tree without blinking. Among the students of the Imperial College, the young man was like a lone wolf with his head held high. He stood alone between heaven and earth, looking very different. The passing crowd quickly noticed him. Hey, look, there's a fool over there. He's standing there motionless. Ah, it's true. Why is there a fool in our Imperial College? He's not a fool. I know this person. He's Meng Wenhao from a school of mathematics. His results have always been among the best in the school. Isn't the school of mathematics closed today? Why is he here? Who knows? Instead of sleeping at home early in the morning, he's here in a daze. He must be crazy. It's said that the School of Mathematics has 8 days off every month. They're so lucky. Yeah, why can they have 8 days off every month? I'm going to protest to the teacher of our school. We have to take 8 days off every month too. Yes, we're going to protest. Why aren't you leaving? You're going to be late. If you're late, the teacher might slap you. Let's go. The surrounding students immediately dispersed, and the gate of the Imperial College returned to its original quiet state. Meng Wenhao remained motionless. He was not affected by the noise outside at all. If he could answer the question well, he could get 2 extra points in the monthly exam. If he could get these 2 points, he would have a much better chance of getting first place in the monthly exam. Many ideas flashed through his mind, but he rejected them all. No, this won't work either. This is definitely not the best plan. There must be a better one. Meng Wenhao was in a trance. He did not feel the passage of time at all. Kong Yingda passed by him and looked at him. He shook his head and sighed. Stubborn child, I hope you could get over it soon. After saying that, he didn't bother Meng Wenhao and walked away. Time passed. It was noon in the blink of an eye. Wow, why is Meng Wenhao still standing here? Yeah, he didn't even move his feet. Don't make a mistake while standing. I think there's something wrong with his brain. Let's go. Let's not care about him. Let's eat. Yes. Let's eat. The surroundings fell into silence again. Meng Wenhao's lips were dry and cracked. His body was a little shaky, but he had no intention of moving. He was still in deep thought. Since the morning, he had thought of hundreds of methods in his mind, such as building a ladder, measuring the trunk section by section, tying a rope to the top of the tree, measuring the length of the rope, etc. However, he rejected them all. His intuition told him that these were not the best methods. There must be a simpler way. There must be. I can think of something. Meng Wenhao thought firmly. Chapter 163. Yongla Lane. At the Li residence, the marriage proposal team was assembled early in the morning. The leader was a middle-aged woman in her 30s or 40s. She had heavy makeup on, and her laughter was mesmerizing. Li Zixuan's eyes were red, and he hurriedly returned to the west courtyard. Xiaoxi, you're going too? Li Zixuan asked curiously when he bumped into Xiaoxi, who was in a hurry. Yes, young master. Madam asked Xiaoxi to deliver something to young mistress. Xiaoxi replied with a smile. Li Zixuan laughed and joked. Little girl, you're calling her young mistress so soon? Xiaoxi, wait a moment. Help me deliver something to Yushi too. Yes, young master. Li Zixuan smiled and returned to his room. He spread out a piece of paper and began to write. I'm willing to win the heart of my beloved. When your hair is white and you're past your prime, I'll still hold your hands and give you the gentleness of the world. Be good, Yushi. Stay at home and wait for me to marry you. After he finished writing, he suddenly had an idea. He folded the letter into a paper crane and pressed it flat into an envelope. He sealed it and walked out. Young master, you going to deliver a letter to young mistress? He was carrying a bag and came to the entrance of the courtyard. She was probably going to follow the marriage proposal team to the Han residence. Li Zixuan passed the letter to Xiaoxi and said to Xiaohe, little girl, don't peek on the way. Xiaoxi was the timid type, while Xiaohe was more lively. It was just that her chest was a little small. Ahem, what was he thinking? Xiaohe pouted and said, Xiaohe won't peek. Young master must have written some mushy words of love to young mistress. Xiaohe will die of jealousy if I read it. You little brat. Li Zixuan's face turned black, and he pretended to knock her head. Xiaohe screamed and ran away with Xiaoxi. Tai Chi Palace, Sweet Dew Hall. This was where Li Er would read and deal with government affairs after the morning court. At this moment, Li Zixuan was sitting at the top with a book in his hand. He frowned as he read. Zhao Song. Is this Li Zixuan's new mathematics? Why have I never seen these strange words before? Zhao Song stepped forward cautiously and said, Your Majesty, this is indeed a new type of mathematics that Li Xianan invented. It is said that this book was compiled by him personally. As for the strange word in the book, I don't understand them either. However, I'm sure that Your Highness, Prince of Wei, will be able to understand them. After Prince of Wei finished listening to the lecture yesterday, he even solved a very difficult question that Li Xianan set. Lier smiled happily. Great. My Qin Ke is indeed talented and learns everything quickly. Huh. Zhao Song smiled and said, It's all thanks to His Majesty's teachings. Lier laughed heartily, accepting the flattery. Your Majesty, the male student from Li County left a question after class yesterday. He said that he wanted the students to figure out a way to measure the height of the 1,000-year-old ginkgo tree in front of the Imperial College. He also said that the student with the best method would get 2 extra points in this month's exam. Zhao Song saw that Lier was very interested in the matter between Li Zixuan and Li Tai. So he continued. Lier was stunned and asked, Monthly exam? What monthly exam? Zhao Song explained, Your Majesty, this is the examination system that Li Xianan set for the School of Mathematics. It is said that the School of Mathematics has a small exam every 7 days, a midterm exam every month, and a major exam every half a year. The top student in the monthly exam will be treated to a meal at the Drunken Immortal restaurant with Li Xianan's personal funds. He can even bring his family along. The top 5 students in the monthly exam will have a roll of honor, while the bottom 5 will have a roll of shame. They will also be responsible for cleaning the teaching hall. The top student in the half-year exam will be rewarded with 100 strings of cash. Lier was surprised for a moment, then smiled and said, This kid is really rich and overbearing. He is even more generous than I am and has a lot of ideas. The students in the Imperial College are going to have a headache. I hope that Li Zixuan can take the lead in guiding the culture of the Imperial College. In recent years, the Imperial College has become a gathering place for rich playboys. Zhao Song said respectfully, Your Majesty is far-sighted and wise. Lier waved his hand and pondered for a moment, then said, But this kid really knows how to make things difficult for others. The ginkgo tree at the entrance of the Imperial College is probably more than 100 feet tall, right? How are the students going to measure it? Zhao Song, can you fly that high with your lightness ability? Zhao Song broke out in sweat and quickly said, Your Majesty, this great grandmaster can't fly that high, right? That kind of height is not something that a human can achieve. Lier rubbed his nose and knew that he was overthinking. Your Majesty, are you still reviewing the memorials? I have prepared iced sour plum soup for you to relieve the heat. At this moment, Zhang Sun walked over elegantly with a bowl of sour plum soup. Seeing this, Zhao Song quickly retreated to the side and became one with the pillars in the hall like an old monk in meditation. Haha, Guanyin, you have troubled yourself. In the future, let the servants do these things. You are not in good health and should not be overworked. Come and sit. Lier moved his seat and gestured for Zhang Sun to sit over. After Zhang Sun sat down, she smiled and said, Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. My body is not that weak. Your Majesty, please drink some sour plum soup to relieve the heat. Lier nodded and took the sour plum soup. He drank a few mouthfuls and exclaimed in satisfaction, Your Majesty, are you not done reviewing the memorials? Zhang Sun looked at the stacked memorials on the table and could not help but feel sorry for him. Soon. Guanyin, please wait a moment. I will finish reviewing them soon and then accompany you to admire the flowers. Lier finished the sour plum soup in a few mouthfuls and went back to work. Moments later, Lier looked at a memorial and muttered, It's this kid again. But this time, he still has some conscience. Zhang Sun came over curiously and asked, Your Majesty, who are you talking about? Lier came back to his senses and said with a smile, It's all because of that kid, Li Zixuan. Kong Yingdao wrote a memorial saying that Li Zixuan had created a type of blackboard and chalk that was extremely beneficial for teaching. Thus, he requested that I allocate a sum of money to the directorate to purchase a batch of blackboards and chalk. Zhang Sun was stunned. This kid even earns money from you, Your Majesty? Lier shook his head and said, this time, this kid still has some conscience. Kong Ningda told him that the imperial court's finances are not good this year. Who knew that this kid would take the initiative to give in and only take the cost? How rare. Zhang Sun smiled and said, if that's the case, this kid is quite righteous. Your Majesty, why do you still seem a little unhappy? Lier looked up and sighed. He said in a deep voice, in the end, it's because the imperial court has no money. They actually let a kid take the initiative to give in. Zhang Sun saw Lier's gloomy face and knew that he was thinking about the Turkic Khaganate South last year. The Tang Empire emptied Chang's treasury to sign the Wei River Treaty. She comforted him gently and said, these 2 years have been hard for Your Majesty. It's a pity that I, as a woman, can't come out to share Your Majesty's burden. Lier put his arm around Zhang Sun's waist and said with a smile, Maid Guanyin has helped me a lot. Of course, these world affairs should be shouldered by me. The Turkic Khaganate is just a clown. When the Tang Empire reinvigorates, we will definitely hunt the grassland. Zhang Sun leaned her head on Lier's shoulder and suddenly thought of something. She looked up and said, Your Majesty, Li Zishuan said that his master predicted that there would be a locust plague next year. Your Majesty, how do you plan to deal with it? Lier's lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations immediately vanished. He said with a solemn expression, Shu Bao personally vouched for this kid, and this kid said it with certainty. I have to believe him. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. I'm discussing this with Fong Xianling, Duru Hui, and the others. I think there will be a solution in a few days. Zhang Sun wondered, Your Majesty, why don't you directly adopt the kid's strategy of raising chickens? Lier stroked Zhang Sun's long hair and sighed. That kid's method may only be able to take care of his family's farmers. What I want to take care of is the people in the world. The imperial court doesn't have the money to raise so many chickens. For this matter, there must be a detailed plan for the specific areas. Zhang Sun nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 164. Afternoon. Who can't hold on to love, always watch it slip away. There are so many happy people in the world, why can't you count me in? Love must be courageous with every setback. Love must be firm and persistent. Every single person has to see through it. If you want to love, don't be afraid of pain. Find someone you love the most, someone you love deeply, someone you want to love, to say goodbye to being single. Someone who is passionate, infatuated, heartless, and ruthless. To scar me, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to see his wife for the next 2 months. Most importantly, his 2 personal maidservants had left today. He didn't even have a girl to flirt with. Li Zishuan was lying alone on a deck chair in the pavilion of the West Courtyard, singing this single love song, in solitude to comfort himself, a pitiful single dog. As he sang, Li Zishuan felt like he was letting go of himself. His singing became louder and louder. The servants watched from afar as their young master went crazy. They were hesitating whether or not they should tell the madam. F***, stop, 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 stop singing. Suddenly, he heard an angry roar. Li Zishuan subconsciously stopped singing. He opened his eyes and looked to the side. It was Li Tai. The little fatty covered his ears and looked at him with a strange expression. Li Zishuan was speechless. His singing wasn't bad, okay? Why did this fatty look so disgusted? Moreover, this is my house. It's bad enough that you didn't greet me when you came in, but you still have the cheek to look down on me? What? Could it be that Qing Kei's ears have become pregnant after hearing your master singing? Li Zishuan asked with a smile. After dealing with Li Tai so many times, Li Zishuan knew that he couldn't be polite with this little fatty. Otherwise, he would definitely take advantage of him. Li Tai spat and said, You're the one who got pregnant after hearing it. It's so unpleasant to hear. It's simply obscene. The person who wrote it is really vulgar. It's a disgrace to the refined. Li Zishuan was so angry that he casually threw a grape from the stone table and scolded. This brat actually called such a classic song of the later generations obscene and cliched. You brat, you're the one who's insulting the educated. Is this how you talk to your teacher? Fatty's mind went blank. He dodged the sneak attack and retorted, "This isn't the Imperial College. Don't put on airs. You say that I don't respect my teachers, but what proof do you have?" This damn fatty actually acted shamelessly. Li Zixuan didn't know what to do with him. Who asked him to have such a good father? Li Zixuan thought viciously. "I'll remember this and see how I'll deal with you the day after tomorrow." "Then may I know the reason for your highness visit today?" Li Zixuan said indifferently with an unapproachable look. Ugh! Li Tai finally remembered the purpose of his visit. It seemed that he had a favor to ask. He was so focused on bickering with Li Zixuan that he forgot about the proper business. This was bad. Their relationship was strained. How was he going to continue the discussion? "Ah, the song you sang just now was really beautiful." Tai is deeply impressed. Li Tai had never flattered anyone before. When he really needed to, he was incomparably stiff. Li Zixuan looked at Li Tai with a strange expression, wondering if this little fatty's brain had short-circuited. "It's SOSO. I say, Chinke, why are you here today?" Li Zixuan thought for a while and decided to listen to what this little fatty wanted. Li Tai's mouth twitched. He secretly cursed Li Zixuan for being shameless, but he smiled brightly and said, "Didn't you say last time that you wanted me to help record the legend of a mortal's journey to immortality? I have nothing to do today, so I came here to do it for you." It turned out that this little fatty had a favor to ask of him. Li Zixuan put on airs and said pretentiously, "Oh, I'm not in a good mood today because someone said that my singing was terrible. I'll tell another day." Li Tai's face suddenly became very ugly, but when he thought of the wonderful journey to the west last time, he gritted his teeth and said, "I was just talking nonsense. Please don't take it to heart." Li Zixuan smiled. He knew that he couldn't go too far at this time. Everything had to be done in moderation. Otherwise, if he went too far, even friends would become enemies. "Well, I'm in a much better mood now, so I can tell you the story." "Chinke, have you finished your homework?" Li Tai heard this and said proudly, "Of course. It's just a question. How can I, Li Tai, be stumped?" Li Zixuan asked curiously, "Oh, so you've already thought of a solution? Tell me quickly." "It's a secret. This student will give the answer to you the day after tomorrow. If I tell you now, there's no guarantee that it won't be leaked," Li Tai said with a guarded face. "F***CK, this damn fatty is probably worried that I'll leak his answer to Iron Egg, isn't he? How shameless. I already have a standard answer. Who cares? TSK, if you don't want to tell me, then I'll ask someone to call Iron Egg over and we'll tell him together." After a while, Iron Egg, Lana and Li Tai sat in a circle in the pavilion. Li Tai had Xin paper in front of him, and a little maid was grinding ink for him. Li Zixuan felt that the way Iron Egg looked at him today was a little strange, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It could only be considered as a man's intuition. After everyone had arrived, Li Zixuan closed his eyes and began to recall the legend of a mortal's journey to immortality that he had read in his previous life. This book could be called a divine book in his previous life. It was the founder of the mortal flow, and it was also the best and longest work of the mortal flow. Unlike Journey to the West, Legend of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality was a web novel. It focused on fast food culture, and the language was plain. The main advantage was that the plot was attractive. Li Zixuan wasn't sure if this type of web novel would be popular in ancient times. Today was a good time to test it out. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Li Zixuan had recalled most of the plot in the first volume of Legend of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality. On one hand, he really liked this novel in his previous life. On the other hand, his current mental strength was incomparable to that of ordinary people. The benefits of having a strong mental strength were not only reflected in mental calculation, but also in memory. "Green Sparrow, are you ready?" Li Zixuan looked at Li Tai and asked. Li Tai squeezed the brush in his hand and said excitedly, I'm ready. Li Zixuan nodded and began to narrate. "The first time we returned to the village at the edge of the mountain. Dumbo's eyes widened as it stared straight at the black roof made of straw and mud. The old quilt covering its body was now a dark yellow, and its original appearance was unrecognizable, with a faint moldy smell wafting from it. The person next to him was his second brother, Hanju. He was sleeping soundly, and there were intermittent sounds of snoring coming from his body. Li Tai frowned as he listened and jotted down notes. This beginning is too plain. It's not as exciting as Journey to the West at all. Although that was what he thought, Li Tai didn't interrupt him. The excellent education from the royal family urged him to continue listening patiently. Chapter 165. Under the Pavilion. From time to time, Li Tai would frown slightly. Naturally, Li Zixuan would notice this. He could understand this. The beginning of a mortal's journey to immortality was indeed not outstanding. This could be seen from its early results. But there's a saying that goes, if you can endure loneliness, you can hold on to prosperity. Although the system of mortal was based on Xiao Qian's masterpiece Misty Journey, in the novels before Mortal, the cultivation system was only the background of the story. The main characters all leveled up very quickly, and the story still relied on other contradictions to progress. Just like World of Warcraft, leveling up was only a small part of the story. However, in Mortal, leveling up was the main content. Every small improvement was incomparably difficult, but it could also make the reader deeply immersed in it, unable to extricate themselves. The entire story revolved around how to take every step to level up. Through accumulation step by step, the legend of Mortal was finally created. As the story went deeper and deeper, Li Tai also discovered the strengths of Mortal. Unlike Journey to the West, which was unconstrained and passionate, the main plot of Mortal only revolved around Han Li's cultivation and leveling up. Every step was filled with setbacks. As Li Tai listened, he could not help but put himself in the shoes of the character. The Seven Mysteries sect, the eternal spring arts that seemed ordinary on the surface, but contained profound mysteries, and the small mysterious bottle that Li Zixuan had accidentally picked up. All of these tempted Li Tai to continue listening. Li Tai's fat right hand held the brush as it danced on the paper. He didn't feel the slightest bit tired. His heart was completely immersed in another world as he listened to Li Zixuan. Even Li Tai was like this, not to mention Iron Egg. The main character of Mortal had the same name as him. Moreover, their family circumstances were very similar. Thus, after listening to the story twice, Iron Egg was already completely immersed. It was as if he was Han Li in the novel, following the ups and downs of the plot, with twists and turns. Lan on the other hand, had no interest in this story. After listening to it for a while, she felt that Han Li wasn't as interesting as Sun Wukong. After bidding farewell to Li Zixuan, she returned to the backyard. Li Zixuan also breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, he had only asked Iron Egg to come over. He did not expect Lan to come over as well. Many of the later parts of the novel were not suitable for her to read. It was good that the little girl had left. Han Li dripped a drop of green liquid on a green 3 crowgrass, turning it into a yellow 3 crowgrass with a 100-year medicinal effect. A few days later, he dripped another drop of green liquid on it, and it actually became another 100 years old. Seeing that this method was indeed effective, Han Li repeated the same method for the next 2 months. Every time a new green liquid was produced from the small bottle, he would drip it on the 3 crowgrass. And the 3 crowgrass lived up to his expectations. Its leaves gradually turned from yellow to yellow-black, and then from yellow-black to black. Finally, when its leaves were completely black and shiny, it became a rare 1,000-year-old 3 crowgrass in the world. Li Tai's eyes widened, and he was shocked in his heart. So this mysterious bottle can infinitely accelerate the maturity of spiritual herbs. This is really amazing. Han Li will definitely be able to completely turn the tables this time. Iron Egg's breathing quickened as he listened. He was as excited as he was when he obtained the mysterious bottle. Okay, that's all for today. Li Zixuan clapped his hands and did not want to continue. He had been talking for almost an entire afternoon, and his throat was smoking. You're done so soon? Li Tai was dumbfounded. He had just gotten into the role, and now it was over. What was this? Iron Egg's face was also full of regret, but he did not raise any objections. Li Zixuan said angrily, "It's already so late. What are you still talking about? Qingke, go back quickly. Be careful. The market will be closed soon." Li Tai waved his hand indifferently and said, "It doesn't matter. If worst comes to worst, I'll just stay at Mr. Li's house tonight. Sir, please tell me 2 more times, or I won't be able to sleep tonight." A large part of the reason why he chose to go to Li Zixuan's class in the School of Mathematics was that it was convenient for him to listen to Li Zixuan's story. After reading Journey to the West, he had been out of books for a long time. Today, he had finally fulfilled his wish. He had just satisfied his craving, but now it was abruptly stopped. How could he stand it? At this time, not to mention that the market was closed, even if it was raining blades, he would not be willing to leave. Li Zixuan's face darkened when he heard this. He roared in his heart, "What the F***CK? If worst comes to worst, you'll just stay at my house tonight. This damn fatty is really thick-skinned. No, I'm tired today. I definitely won't teach anymore." Li Zixuan refused in a muffled voice. Li Tai saw that he was determined and knew that there was no room for negotiation. He thought for a while and said, "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow. I won't teach tomorrow either. I have something to do tomorrow." Li Zixuan said quickly. Tomorrow, he would go to the workshop to see how the preparation of the printing department was going. The students were still waiting for the textbooks the day after tomorrow. Li Tai suddenly became angry. He wanted to curse on the spot, but when he thought of the consequences, he shrank his neck and said sullenly, "What can you do? Are you lying to me again? Believe it or not." Li Zixuan was too lazy to explain. He got up and was about to take the manuscript of Ordinary Man that Li Tai had transcribed. "Then I'll go with you tomorrow. Hey, this is what I wrote. Why are you taking it away? I plan to sell this story in the future. You can only listen to it. You're not allowed to take it away, so as not to leak the secret," Li Zixuan said with a smile. F***CK. Li Tai was sure that Li Zixuan was doing this on purpose. He was taking revenge on him for not handing in his homework in advance. In his opinion, although the novel was interesting, how much could it be sold for? Li Tai gritted his teeth and turned to leave. TSK, this little fatty's handwriting is not bad." Li Tai was speechless. At this moment, he really wanted to turn around and fight Li Zixuan to the death. Here, Li Tai was addicted to Ordinary Man. Over at the Imperial College, Meng Wenhao was lost in thought, unable to extricate himself. The sun was already setting in the west, but Meng Wenhao was still standing under the ginkgo tree stubbornly, looking up at the treetops. Because he had been in this position for a long time and hadn't stopped drinking, his thin and weak body seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The drums of the Imperial College sounded, and the students rushed out of the classroom. When they arrived at the entrance of the Imperial College, they found that Meng Wenhao was still standing there. Thus, many people surrounded him, pointing and whispering to each other. "Oh my God, why is he still here? He's been standing there for so long. Will something happen to him? I think he must have been stimulated by something and turned into a fool." "I don't think so. Meng Wenhao's grades have always been good. What stimulated him? I don't care. I'm going home. This person is either crazy or a fool. Yes. Let's go home." After a while, the crowd dispersed. Facing the setting sun, their shadows were very long, and many of them reflected on Meng Wenhao's body. Meng Wenhao inadvertently looked down and saw this scene. He was stunned for a moment and seemed to understand something. Then he shouted excitedly, "Ha! I finally figured it out." As he spoke, he wanted to run home. Unexpectedly, he stood for too long and lost control of his legs. He fell to the ground, but he continued to shout excitedly. The students who were walking in front of him turned around and saw this crazy scene. They couldn't help but look at each other and think, "It seems that this student is really crazy." Chapter 166. Not long after Li Tai left, Li Jingma came back with a group of people to escort the bride. Old Man Li's face was flushed and full of joy. He was pulled by his wife and asked a lot of questions, but he did not seem to be impatient. Xiao Shi came over secretly and went to Li Zixuan's side. She said softly, "Young master," young madam cried when she saw your letter. "She also asked me to bring you a letter." Li Zixuan said happily, "Quickly give it to me." Xiao Shi carefully took out a letter from her waist pouch. and passed it to Lisa Schwan. Lisa Schwan took it and walked to the side. He opened it and saw a line of beautiful words. I want to know you and live a long life. The mountains have no edges. The heaven and earth merge. The river runs dry. The winter thunder rumbles. The summer snow dares to be separated from you. This was a Han folk love song called Shangxia. Lisa Schwan used mushy words to express his love to Han Yushi. Han Yushi used poetry to express her unswerving love. This girl was shy when she needed to be, but once she expressed her feelings, she was passionate and unrestrained when she loved him. Lisa Schwan smiled proudly. He had picked up a treasure. This kind of girl was even cuter, right? When Xiao He and Xiao Shi saw Lisa Schwan's lewd smile, they couldn't help but back off in fear. The next day, Teacher, what are you doing here today? Li Tai left unwillingly yesterday, but he did not believe Lisa Schwan's words. He thought that Lisa Schwan was deliberately finding an excuse to fool him. Therefore, he came to the workshop today. Lisa Schwan smiled and said, I'm here to get the teaching materials. The day before yesterday, I told the students that I would print teaching materials for everyone. I can't go back on my words, right? Teaching materials. Damn teaching materials. Hearing these two words, Li Tai suddenly remembered his foolish act of buying teaching materials at a high price. Thus, he silently followed behind and didn't want to speak anymore. Lisa Schwan looked at him and knew what he was thinking. Iron Egg had told him the day before yesterday. Lisa Schwan neither agreed nor objected to this kind of thing. Anyway, one was willing to take the hit and the other was willing to take the hit. His disciple didn't suffer any losses, and Li Tai didn't lack the money. When he arrived at the workshop, he was greeted by the sight of countless busy craftsmen. Compared to the beginning, the number of craftsmen working in the workshop had increased by more than 3 times. The main reason was that the supply of scooters and skateboards could not meet the demand. These 2 items were already hard to find in Chang'an. Last month, he had negotiated a cooperation with Wang Ranbiao, and he had to give him 50% of the supply every month. The Chiziu Pavilion Workshop, which was already short of supply, was even more strained. Seeing that Lisa Schwan had arrived, the craftsmen didn't stop working. They only raised their heads and greeted him with a smile when Lisa Schwan walked to their side. This was what Lisa Schwan had told him before. He didn't like formalism. For him, efficiency was the way to go. The craftsmen were now full of a sense of belonging to the workshop. Not only was the treatment good, but there were also no officials who would scold them for no reason. They could obtain the most basic respect here. Therefore, when they worked, it was a race against time. When Li Tai saw that Lisa Schwan had arrived and that the craftsmen were still at their original positions, each carrying out their duties, he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. It wasn't that he hadn't been to the imperial family's workshop before, but every time he went, all of the officials and craftsmen would swarm out, fighting to prostrate themselves before him. Li Tai didn't find this annoying. Now that he saw the orderly scene of the strange interest pavilion workshop, Li Tai couldn't help but think, this is what a workshop should be like. Led by a shop assistant, Lisa Schwan came to a spacious, independent courtyard. Inside, dozens of craftsmen were neatly arranging the dried clay molds in a certain order in a frame made in advance. When a frame was filled, it would become a page. Then the ink was brushed, the paper was covered, and the press was done in one go. A page of the book was printed just like that. Li Tai, who was next to him, widened his eyes in shock and said with a confused face, What kind of printing method is this? Why haven't I seen it before? Lisa Schwan laughed and said, Qingke, there are many things you haven't seen. Learn from me. Ha! After that, he left the confused Li Tai and went straight to find Lu Yidao. Master Lu, what do you think of the movable type printing technique? Lisa Schwan asked with a smile when he saw Lu Yidao fiddling with a few newly dried clay movable characters. Oh, young master, you are here. This movable type printing technique is really magical. It just avoids the shortage of engraving plates. As long as enough individual movable characters are prepared in advance, they can be combined at any time. It greatly speeds up the plate-making time. After the movable type plates are printed, they can be dismantled and reused. Moreover, The movable type takes up less space than the engraving plates, so it is easier to store and keep. If we only print more than 30 teaching materials, it is certainly not as cost-effective as hiring someone to copy them. However, these movable characters can be kept as a backup. If we want to print any books in the future, the cost is too low. Liu Yidao saw Li Zixuan come in and quickly stood up and said excitedly. When Li Zixuan was about to answer, he heard Li Tai, who had just entered the door, shout, "Huh, this method is really wonderful. Li Zixuan, you are really a genius." Li Tai was so excited that he didn't even call him Mr. Li. He directly called Li Zixuan by his name. Seeing that Li Tai was praising him, Li Zixuan decided not to argue with him about this. "Young master, who is this?" Liu Yidao was old and shrewd, but he also had good eyesight. He saw Li Tai's noble aura and knew that he was definitely not an ordinary person, so he asked aloud. Li Zixuan didn't want to scare him, so he waved his hand and said, "He is just my student." Li Tai shrugged and didn't mean to reveal his identity. Liu Yidao said, "Oh," and thought that since the young master was teaching in the Imperial College and this person could follow the young master around and was the young master's student, he should be the son of an official. So he saluted Li Tai with his hands folded in front of his chest as a greeting. "Master Liu, when will my teaching materials be printed?" Li Zixuan came here today for the purpose of getting teaching materials, so he asked directly, "Young master, they will all be printed and bound in the afternoon. I will send them to your mansion then." Liu Yidao replied with his hands folded in front of his chest. Li Zixuan nodded with satisfaction. He thought for a while and then asked, "Master Liu, I asked you to set up a printing department last time. How is it going?" "Young master, the basic prototype of the printing department has been set up. At present, there is one supervisor, 20 craftsmen in charge of carving, more than 40 craftsmen in charge of typesetting and printing, and a scholar in charge of text proofreading." Li Zixuan said curiously, "Oh, there are scholars who are willing to come here?" In Li Zixuan's impression, there was a clear division between the classes of scholars, farmers, workers, and merchants in ancient times. Scholars were all arrogant. How could they be engaged in the so-called lowly industry? Liu Yidao stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Young master, not all scholars can pass the exam. After all, the majority of people fail the exam. They also need to earn money to make a living." Chapter 167. In the workshop of Strange Interest Pavilion. "Master Liu, where is the scholar now? Take me to see him." Li Zixuan was suddenly very interested in this down-and-out scholar. How miserable was this person? He actually came to work in the workshop. Li Tai curled his lips and secretly thought that Li Zixuan was really inexperienced. Li Tai had seen this kind of thing many times. Thinking about it, Li Tai could not help but feel a sense of superiority in his heart. Cough, cough. "Young master, this person is probably reading in the back hall. He is a scholar after all. How can I let him mingle with us bumpkins?" Thus, I arranged a separate place for him to work. Liu Yidao wiped the sweat on his forehead and said with a little guilty conscience. After all, he had made a decision on this matter. If Li Zixuan blamed him, he had nothing to say. Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Master Liu, take me to see him." Li Zixuan did not blame Liu Yidao for making a decision on his own. In fact, if this person was really capable, it was okay to give him some preferential treatment. After all, if there was no scholar in the printing department, it was obviously impossible. But if this person was just a good-for-nothing who used the name of the scholar to cheat for food and drink, Li Zixuan would let him go back to where he came from. "Young master, here it is." Following Liu Yidao to the back hall in the southernmost part of the workshop, Li Zixuan looked around. The environment was quiet, birds were singing, and flowers were fragrant. It was really a good place to read. "Okay." Li Zixuan nodded. Liu Yidao quickly stepped forward and led Li Zixuan and Li Tai into the door. "Oh, Steward Liu, you are here." In the room, a middle-aged man with unkempt hair and a dirty face greeted Liu Yidao enthusiastically after seeing him come in. Li Zixuan frowned. No matter how he looked at this person, he looked like a beggar. He didn't look like a scholar at all. Could it be that he really came to the workshop to cheat food and drinks? "Mr. Ma, this is our boss." Louis Dao hurriedly stepped aside and told the middle-aged man who was the master. The sloppy middle-aged scholar was obviously stunned. After a moment, he cupped his hands and said to Li Zixuan in a serious manner, "I am Ma Zhou from Faping County in Boizhou. Nice to meet you, Mr. Li." Li Zixuan, who had originally wanted to test this person's talent, suddenly widened his eyes in shock when he heard the person's self-introduction. In his heart, he roared 3 times, F***CK. This person was actually the future Prime Minister of the Great Tang, and this formidable individual was actually working for him. Li Zixuan felt a little dizzy. The world was changing too fast. A man from Li County? A man from Li County? Ma Zhou saw that Li Zixuan was standing there in shock and didn't speak for a long time. He was a little worried and called him twice. He was worried in his heart. Could it be that the fact that he was a teaching assistant in Boizhou, drank all day, and was scolded by the provincial governor for not doing any work had already reached the ears of this man from the county? Ma Zhou lost his parents when he was young and had no one to rely on. Fortunately, he was diligent and didn't give up on himself. However, the years of poverty made him somewhat angry. His behavior was undisciplined and he drank wantonly. He was often drunk. During the reign of Wuda, the provincial governor of Boizhou, de Shishu, heard that Ma Zhou was proficient in classics and history. He was knowledgeable and talented, so he hired him to be a teaching assistant in Boizhou. However, this fellow's work ethic was obviously problematic. He drank all day and didn't take teaching as his job. He was paid, but didn't do any work. He only knew how to drink and looked drunk all day. The Shishu reprimanded him a few times, but Ma Zhou didn't change. He still did things his own way. Finally, one day, Ma Zhou drank and messed things up again. The Shishu couldn't take it anymore and heavily reprimanded him. This time, the reprimand was very heavy. Ma Zhou lost face on the spot. Thus, in a fit of anger, he took off his official robe and handed it to his student. He asked him to return the provincial governor's robe. Then, he laughed at the sky and left Boizhou. When this fellow left Boizhou, he was very confident. However, when he left Boizhou, he was dumbfounded. He didn't have any money for travel. Fortunately, he met a few important people on the way. After a few turns, he arrived at the capital, Chang'an. However, his money for travel had already been used up. However, he had to find a job. After finding a few jobs at the academy, he had nothing to do. The money they gave him was too little. It wasn't even enough for him to drink. Thus, this fellow quit his job and continued to look for jobs. As a matter of fact, he happened to come across the workshop of Strange Taste Pavilion. The pay was very generous. Thus, he didn't care about being reserved as a scholar and eagerly ran over. Oh, Mr. Ma, right? How did Mr. Ma recognize me?" Li Zixuan reacted and casually asked. Ma Zhou smiled and said, "The scooters of Strange Taste Pavilion are not only popular in Chang'an, they are also gradually becoming popular in other provinces and counties. The divine plow of Curve Yuan also originated from Strange Taste Pavilion. It was greatly promoted by the current emperor. Countless people in the world have benefited from it. Nowadays, who doesn't know the name of Strange Taste Pavilion? Who doesn't know the owner of Strange Taste Pavilion? Just now, when Steward Liu called you owner, I guessed that you were the man from Lantian County." Li Zixuan had only asked casually. He didn't expect Ma Zhou to beat around the bush with so many twists and turns. He thought to himself that when this person was smart, he really wasn't vague at all. Mr. Ma is smart. I wonder if Mr. Ma is satisfied with this job? Satisfied. Ma Zhou nodded repeatedly. However, he heard Li Zixuan's tone. It seemed that he had the intention of raising his pay. Then, he rolled his eyes and added, "It's just that there's no wine to drink in this workshop. It's really a fly in the ointment." Li Zixuan rolled his eyes. In his previous life, he had heard that Ma Zhou was addicted to alcohol. Now, it seemed that it was true. "As long as Mr. Ma has real talent and can help me with something, I'm willing to give you some good wine." Li Zixuan purposely kept him in suspense. Ma Zhou's eyes lit up. He thought to himself that there was hope. He quickly asked, "Is owner's words true?" Li Zixuan smiled and said, "Of course it's true. I wonder if Mr. Ma has heard of Drunken Immortal? If Mr. Ma is willing to do his best to help me, I'll give you an extra pot of Drunken Immortal every month in addition to your salary. How about it? A pot of Drunken Immortal? Majo couldn't help but swallow a few mouthfuls of saliva. Not only had he heard of Drunken Immortal, he had also smelled it. Of course, he couldn't afford to drink it. When he first came to Chong, and the first thing he did was to find out where the best restaurant in Chong was. In the end, when he arrived at Drunken Immortal, he was dumbfounded when he saw the price of the wine and dishes. With the few hundred copper coins in his wallet, he couldn't even afford a plate of chicken, let alone a liter of Drunken Immortal. Therefore, he could only pretend as if nothing had happened and tell the waiter that he had gone to the wrong place. Then, he silently left. When he walked to the door, he suddenly smelled the strong fragrance of wine on the tables of other diners. As a result, this guy couldn't take another step. He stood at the door of Drunken Immortal for the whole day, smelling the Drunken Immortal. At this time, he heard Li Zixuan say that he could provide him with an extra pot of Drunken Immortal every month. His heart trembled a few times. This was worth 50 strings of coins, which was dozens of times more than his basic salary. However, he had never met Li Zixuan before. Why would he give him such a generous offer? After being excited for a while, Majo immediately calmed down and became vigilant against Li Zixuan. What does owner want me to do? I'll make it clear in advance. Although I'm poor, I will never commit crimes, break the law, or go against reason. No matter how much money you give me, I will never do it. Sweat, the offer was too generous. The other party thought that he had bad intentions. Li Zixuan was sweating in his heart. It was hard to be a good person these days. Mr. Ma, don't worry. What I want you to do is definitely not against the law or against reason. It's just that. Chapter 168. What do you mean? When Majo heard the first half of Li Zixuan's words, his eyes lit up. However, when he heard that Li Zixuan did not continue, he felt as if 100 claws were scratching his heart. He was annoyed that Li Zixuan was deliberately keeping him in suspense. Li Zixuan smiled and did not answer. Instead, he changed the topic and asked, "What do you think of the movable type printing technology in this workshop?" When Majo heard about printing technology, he immediately became excited and said excitedly, "Of course it's good. That's great. With the movable type printing technology, the cost of books will be greatly reduced. In the future, all the poor scholars in the world will be able to afford to read books." "Warju, you're doing a great deed." Li Zixuan was puzzled and asked, "What? Do you mean that books are very expensive now? Scholars can't afford them?" He had transmigrated for a long time and had never bought books from a bookstore. He did not understand the situation of the book market. When he saw that Majo was overly excited, he was curious and asked this question. When Majo heard Li Zixuan's question, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes suddenly became red. He angrily hammered the pillar next to him and said angrily, "It's not just expensive, it's simply robbery. My Tang Dynasty has millions of books. I'm afraid that 700,000 to 800,000 of them are in the hands of the aristocratic families. The price of a book in a bookstore is enough for an ordinary family of 3 to live for a year. How can those poor scholars afford it? If it wasn't for my father's collection of books, I would still be an illiterate person. It's good enough that I didn't starve to death. How can I still hope to read books?" The way Majo was spouting nonsense was like an ancient version of an angry youth. In fact, Majo was right. The book trade in the Tang Dynasty was very active. Bookstores were all over the country. Because engraving printing was not popular, books were still handwritten. Therefore, the price was relatively expensive. Generally, each volume cost more than 1,000 copper coins. Yimeng of the Southern Song Dynasty summed up the price of books before the Tang Dynasty in one word: expensive. He said, before the Tang Dynasty, all books were written and there was no way to print them. People valued books. It could be seen that at that time, people regarded books as a very valuable commodity and scrambled to collect them. Just like modern real estate, it was more valuable than gold, which led to people buying houses crazily. Li Tai couldn't help but interject. "Doesn't the imperial court encourage people to copy books? Mr. Ma, you can copy books and send them to the government office to exchange for money before buying other books." After Lier became the emperor, in order to encourage the people to contribute their books, he once issued an edict. Books from the 3 ministries will be given 1,000 coins. It meant that each copy of a book would cost 1,000 copper coins. It could be said that this was the first time an official price had been set. Therefore, the books in bookstores were usually priced slightly higher than this. Majot said angrily, "Bullsh asterisk T. If you want to copy books, you have to be able to borrow the books first. Those rich families with book collections will know that you borrow books to copy, so they will first charge you 600 to 700 copper coins as rent." "Uh-oh. May I ask how I should address you, little brother?" Majot scolded for a while, then remembered that he didn't know who this little fatty was. "Master Lu, you go ahead with your work. I will talk to Mr. Ma for a while," Lisa Xuan said. Lu Yidao cupped his hands and said yes, then left and closed the door. "Mr. Ma, this is His Highness, Prince of Wei." Lisa Xuan formally introduced him to Majot. Majot's legs trembled, and he almost knelt down. He had just scolded Li Tai. "Greetings to His Highness Prince of Wei," Majot said in a trembling voice. Although he hated the rich, the supremacy of imperial power had been deeply ingrained in his heart. Moreover, Majot was well-versed in classics, history, classics, and books. What he wrote was a policy of stabilizing the country, so naturally, he wanted to sell goods to the imperial family. For many years, he had not found the right sales channel and only wandered around the states and counties. How could he sell a good price? Now that he met Li Tai, the most beloved son of His Majesty, his mind was a little active. However, when he remembered that he had just scolded Li Tai, he couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Li Tai waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be so polite." In fact, he was not very interested in Majot. After all, it was the first time they met, and he didn't know how talented Majot was. Moreover, Majot's sloppy appearance really made people dislike him. On the other hand, he had a literature center and many scholars under him. He didn't lack literati. Majot had experienced the fickleness of human nature for many years. Naturally, he could see that Li Tai was not interested in him. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was better to do his job well and not bite off more than he could chew. Li Zixuan smiled and said to Majot, "Mr. Ma, when I first set up this printing department in the workshop, I thought that it would be more convenient to print books in the future. That's why I invented movable type printing." Majot and Li Tai were speechless. This was a very strong reason. To set up a printing workshop for the convenience of printing books. How rich must your family be? However, after meeting Mr. Ma today and hearing Mr. Ma's words, I decided to make this printing department bigger and stronger. In the future, the printing department will be renamed the Ministry of Culture. Not only will we print classics, but we will also publish our own books to open the minds of the people. Moreover, I have a way to reduce the cost of paper. The ultimate dream of our Ministry of Culture is to let everyone in the world be able to read and read. Brother Ma, I wonder if you are willing to help me sincerely? Li Zixuan looked at Majot and said sincerely. These words weren't completely a bluff. Previously, he set up the printing department only for his own convenience. However, now that Majot was in charge of the printing department, if he still wanted to use the printing department to print books for himself, it would be a waste of Majot's talent in governing the country. In the future, the printing department must be transformed into a cultural export department. Majot's eyes widened and his breathing quickened. He was really shocked by Li Zixuan's shocking words. Let everyone in the world be able to read and read. What a great dream this was. Angry youth, angry youth. In addition to being fond of scolding others, he also had a characteristic of being impulsive. Majot lived up to his name as an angry youth. I'll do it, as long as I can let everyone in the world be able to read and read. Lord Zhu, even if you don't give me a single salary, I, Majot, will do it. At this moment, Majot had completely forgotten about the ethics of being a scholar and not engaging in a lowly profession. He just wanted to roll up his sleeves and go all out. Good. Brother Ma, you are so bold. Don't worry, with me here, this dream is definitely not just a dream. One day, it will be realized by us. Brother Ma, not only will you be famous for thousands of years, you will also be rich. Li Zixuan's heroic spirit rose as he laughed heartily. Li Tai looked envious and interrupted. Sir, why don't you count me in? Tai has many scholars under him. Perhaps they can help you. As a member of the royal family, Li Tai also had his own position. Li Tai was now wantonly suppressing the aristocratic families and promoting poor officials. Therefore, Li Tai himself did not like people from aristocratic families. Li Zixuan's Ministry of Culture was a very good weapon to deal with aristocratic families. Li Zixuan did not think about these twists and turns. He thought for a moment and nodded. Okay, then I will give Qingke 30% of the Ministry of Culture's shares. Qingke, remember to bring 3,000 strings of cash to buy shares in the future. Selling books at a low price would affect the interests of many people. Li Zixuan wanted to pull a prince into the car as a shield. Li Tai vomited blood and said, 3,000 strings of cash? Why don't you go rob someone? I can send a few scholars to help you. Can you ask for less money? Li Zixuan waved his hand and said, there's no need. Brother Ma's talent alone is enough. Qingke, if you think it's too expensive, then forget it. Master will go find Gao Ming. I think Gao Ming will be willing. Nonsense. If Ma Zhou could be a thinker, how could he not be talented? He did not care about the scholars under Li Tai. Maybe they would all be arrogant and not do anything when they came. I am willing. Brother Zixuan, I am willing to pay 3,000 strings of cash for 30% of the shares. Li Qingxian's shout came from outside the door. Li Zixuan was speechless. Speak of the devil. Li Chengxian must have been eavesdropping outside for a while. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Chengxian pushed the door open and entered. He then looked at Li Zixuan excitedly. Chapter 169. A few days ago, Li Zixuan heard that Li Zixuan had created a new type of mathematics in the Imperial College. Furthermore, Li Tai had also received praise from Li Er for this. Thus, he wanted to come to Yongle Lane to look for Li Zixuan for a textbook to see what this new type of mathematics was all about. In the end, he was informed by the Li residence's servants that Li Zixuan was in the workshop. Thus, he came looking for him. Some of the old people in the workshop knew Li Chengxian, so no one dared to stop him. They even pointed the way for him. When Li Chengxian arrived at the back hall, he happened to hear Li Zixuan's bold words. Then, he heard about the investment and hurriedly called out. If it were 2 months ago, he definitely wouldn't have been able to take out 3,000 strings of cash. However, he had 30% of the shares in Strange Interest Pavilion. Last month's dividends amounted to more than 2,000 strings of cash. Now, he could be considered to be quite wealthy. After tasting the benefits, Li Zixuan needed someone to work with. How could Li Chengxian refuse? Li Tai glared at him and said, Big brother, I came here first. How can you snatch it from me? Li Chengxian smiled and said, Isn't it because you think it's expensive, Qingke? I can only do it for you. Ma Zhou's legs trembled, and he almost peed himself. Another great person had come. He couldn't help but think that his boss's background was really strong. Student Ma Zhou greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. Li Chengxian grunted and waved his hand with a smile. Mr. Ma, please dispense with the formalities. He knew how to conduct himself slightly better than Li Tai. When he heard Li Zixuan's tone outside the door, he seemed to be very respectful to Ma Zhou. Thus, he also gave some face to Li Zixuan and addressed Ma Zhou as Mr. Ma Zhou. Ma Zhou was instantly overwhelmed by the favor. To be addressed as Mr. by the current crown prince was such an honor. Li Tai said unhappily, Who says I think it's expensive? Isn't it just 3,000 strings of cash? I can afford it, Mr. Li. I'll get someone to send 3,000 strings of cash over tomorrow. Since young, the little fatty had always liked to compete with his big brother, Li Chengxian. At this time, how could he be willing to fall behind? He calculated in his mind. If the Prince of Wei's residents were to raise money from everywhere, they should be able to gather 3,000 strings of cash. If that was not possible, they could also sell some books. When Li Chengxian heard this, he said anxiously, Little Xian, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. This solitude is also willing to fork out money to cooperate. Li Zishuan shook his head and laughed. Your Highness, why are you here today? Li Chengxian was a little embarrassed. After all, he had been eavesdropping outside for a while. Ahem, I originally wanted to borrow a textbook from you today to see your new mathematics. I didn't expect you to not be at home, so I came here to look for you. Li Zishuan nodded, thought for a moment, and said, since both your highnesses want to participate, how about this? Both your highnesses will contribute 2,000 strings of cash each, and each of you will get 20% of the shares. What do you think, your highnesses? He only wanted to honestly live his own leisurely days. He didn't want to help Li Tai and Li Chengxian in their infighting, nor did he want to offend either of them. Of course, if possible, Li Zishuan hoped that the two of them could live in harmony. Li Tai and Li Chengxian looked at each other. They both knew that this was probably the best solution, so they nodded in agreement. Okay, then this department will be officially named Chi-Tzu Culture. The three of us will be in charge of it. I hope that everyone will work together to make all the people of the Tang Empire able to afford to read as soon as possible. Okay, no matter what grudges the two of them had before, now that they had a common interest, they could not help but be of one mind. Next, I will be in charge of improving the paper-making technology and reducing the cost of paper. Qingke heard that you have a rich collection of books. Tomorrow, Brother Ma will go to your place to choose dozens of fine books. We will first print these books and sell them. I'll buy a store next to the Strange Interest Pavilion to sell books. Li Zishuan thought for a moment and said. Li Tai smiled and said, okay, I will go back today and tell the servants. Ma Zhou, you just need to come over tomorrow. Ma Zhou cupped his hands and said to Li Tai, thank you, your highness. Li Zishuan took 2 steps and said, in addition to printing some unique copies of ancient books, we also have to produce our own books. Relatively speaking, this is a huge project. Let me tell you an idea first. You can refer to it. Li Chengxian asked curiously, Xiaoxian, you plan to write the books yourself? Li Zishuan nodded and said, currently, the aristocratic families control most of the education resources. If the children of ordinary families want to read and write, they have to pay a high price. I plan to organize people to produce a dictionary to teach people how to read and write. Li Tai smiled and said, Mr. Li, the book you mentioned already exists. Now, every bookstore sells Shuo Wenjiezi. The author of Shuo Wenjiezi was Su Shun. It was the first book in China that systematically analyzed the Chinese characters and studied the source of the characters. It was also one of the earliest dictionaries in the world. It was a Chinese dictionary arranged according to the radicals. It was written from the 12th year of the Han Emperor Yongyuan to the 1st year of the Emperor Jinghua. In the Sui and Tang dynasties, Shuo Wenjiezi had become one of the essential reference books for scholars. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, the dictionary I'm talking about is Shuo Wenjiezi with symbols. I call these symbols pinyin. As long as you learn this spelling method, no matter how complicated the word is, as long as it is marked with pinyin, even a child can read it. Is pinyin so magical? Ma Zhou couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He had suffered since he was a child, and he understood better than anyone that if pinyin really was as miraculous as Li Zishuan said, then the educational structure of the Great Tang would undergo a fundamental change, and more people would become literate. Li Zishuan didn't talk nonsense. He came to the table, picked up the brush, and wrote 26 letters on the paper. He began to teach the 3 of them pinyin. An hour later, Li Zishuan wrote Jiao in pinyin and said, Qingke, you try to spell it. Among them, Li Tai's ability to accept new things was the strongest. Therefore, Li Zishuan let him try first. Li Tai nodded and went forward to spell it. Jiao yi jiao. Li Zishuan clapped his hands and said with a smile, exactly. Ma Zhou also reacted and exclaimed in admiration, amazing, it's really amazing. If this is a child from an ordinary family, it would take a few days to learn pinyin. Then, if they buy a dictionary like you said, wouldn't they be able to learn to read at home? It's really magical. Li Chengxian also said with a happy face, opinion is really a good thing. If my father knew about it, he would be very happy. Li Zishuan said, since everyone agrees on this dictionary, Ma Zhou will be the chief editor of the dictionary. Qin Ke, Gao Ming, each of you send 3 scholars to assist Ma Zhou. This dictionary will be called the Tang Empire Dictionary. Pay attention. The scholars you send are only to assist Ma Zhou. Don't fight with each other and make the Ministry of Culture a mess. Li Zishuan decided to say the ugly words first, in case there was trouble later. Li Chengxian nodded and said, okay. Ma Zhou waved his hand and said, Lord Zhu, you can't do that. I have little talent and knowledge. How can I let the scholars assist me? Li Tai also frowned and said, yes, is Ma Zhou talented enough? This guy never knew how to beat around the bush. His words were too hurtful. Li Zishuan said angrily, I believe Brother Ma can do it well. If you have any objections, we won't compile the dictionary. Ma Zhou saw Li Zishuan supporting him and couldn't help but feel touched. Li Tai rolled his eyes. He learned this from Li Zishuan and didn't say a word. Chapter 170. After settling the matter of the dictionary of the Tang Dynasty, Li Zishuan suddenly felt that he had forgotten something. After thinking for a while, he clapped his hands and smiled. He clapped his hands and said, oh right, Ma Zhou, other than compiling the dictionary, you have to help me with something else. I want to start a newspaper. Ma Zhou frowned and asked, Lord Zhu, what is a newspaper? In the past, he was conceited that he was extremely talented and knowledgeable, but what he saw and heard today had really struck a great blow to his confidence. Because some words that he'd never heard of kept popping out from Li Zishuan's mouth, causing him to be unable to help but wonder if Li Zishuan was too monstrous, or if his knowledge was too shallow. Li Chengxian and Li Tai also looked at him curiously. Li Zishuan explained, the so-called newspaper is a printed matter that is published to the public on a regular basis. It mainly publishes strange news and comments from famous people. This newspaper is quite large and is divided into several sections. It can record some of the new things that are happening around you. It can also invite some famous scholars to interpret the new decrees issued by the imperial court for the public. It can also record some of the recent major cases that the government has tried. It can even publish some novels. The newspaper will be published once a day, and then we will hire a newsboy to sell it in the tea houses. In the early stages, we will write the content ourselves. In the later stages, we can ask scholars to submit articles to us. We will select the best and pay them some remuneration. In the long run, the content of our newspaper will become more and more abundant. The public will also get used to buying a newspaper every day when they have nothing to do to see what is happening around them. Li Chengxian pondered for a moment, then clapped his hands and laughed. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. In this way, we will be able to know everything that is happening in the world without leaving the house. Li Zishuan nodded. That's the logic. Li Tai laughed. This is good, this is good. This way, we can read novels in the newspaper in the future. Li Zishuan was speechless. He was worried that once the newspaper was published, the Prince of Wei would become a shut-in who only knew how to read novels every day. Ma Zhou cupped his hands and said, Don't worry, Lord Zhu. This Ma will handle this matter as soon as possible. Li Zishuan thought about it again and said, Brother Ma, you can put more effort into the other sections. I'll be in charge of writing the novel section first. You'll have to work hard for the next few days. Write down the content I just mentioned and give it to me. I'll do the typesetting for the first issue. For the next few issues, you just have to copy it. Ma Zhou was just about to agree when Li Chengxian beat him to it. Little Xian, you have a new novel? Li Zishuan nodded and said, I just started writing it recently. It's called The Legend of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality. Here, this is the manuscript. As he spoke, he took out a stack of manuscripts from his sleeve. His other purpose for coming here today was to ask Louis Dao to arrange for someone to print the first few chapters of the novel and then sell it as a serial book. As a result, now that he had Ma Zhou, Li Zishuan planned to create big news and directly launch a newspaper. He believed that with the addition of this wonderful novel in the early stages, the sales of a newspaper would definitely get better and better. Li Chengxian hurriedly took it excitedly and glanced at it. He immediately exclaimed, "Wow, I haven't seen you for a few days. Little Xian, your handwriting has become so good? Oh no, why does this handwriting look a little familiar?" Li Tai smiled proudly and said, "I wrote this myself. Of course my handwriting is good." Calligraphy was one of Li Tai's strengths that he was proud of. At this time, when he heard Li Chengxian's praise, the little fatty couldn't help but grin, even though he usually didn't get along with his big brother. "Oh, no wonder, no wonder. Qingke, your calligraphy has improved again." Li Chengxian nodded in understanding and casually praised Li Tai. As the big brother, he still had this kind of bearing. "Haha, you flatter me." The little fatty's face was full of pride. He didn't know the meaning of modesty at all. Li Chengxian smiled and looked at the thick stack of manuscripts in his hands. He thought for a moment and said, "Little Xian, I wonder if I can take these manuscripts back to read." He wanted to read them now, but with so many manuscripts, it was obvious that he wouldn't be able to finish reading them in a short period of time. He could only take them back and read them slowly. Li Zixuan nodded and said, "Yes, Your Highness. Just remember to send someone to deliver them after you've finished reading them." Okay. The few of them discussed the future direction of strange culture. Li Tai and Li Chengxian said goodbye. The two of them usually had a lot of things to do. They weren't like Li Zixuan, the rich second generation, who could wander around all day. At this time, only Li Zixuan and Ma Zhou were left in the room. Li Zixuan smiled and asked, "Brother Ma, are you more confident now?" Ma Zhou laughed heartily and said, "Of course. I really didn't expect Lord Zhu to be able to get in touch with the Crown Prince and Prince Wei. With the help of the two of you, our strange culture will definitely succeed." Li Zixuan nodded and looked into Ma Zhou's eyes for a while before saying, he stared at them for a while and said, "Brother Ma, if this succeeds, not only will you and I be famous for eternity, but you will also have a bright future and wealth in the future. I hope Brother Ma could settle down and do things honestly before strange culture takes off. Don't think about anything else." Ma Zhou's heart trembled. He knew that Li Zixuan's words were a warning to him. He didn't expect Li Zixuan to see through his previous thoughts. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "Lord Zhu is right. I will definitely do my best." He also understood that he had nothing now. Prince Wei and the Crown Prince would definitely look down on him. Li Zixuan could help him now. No matter what, he had to be worthy of Li Zixuan. Instead of going out to curry favor with others, it was better to stay here and do a good job. When the time came and his name was known, he wouldn't have to worry about his future. Li Zixuan nodded with satisfaction. He walked to the table and pondered for a moment. He said, "I wonder if Brother Ma has a family in Chang'an." Ma Zhou sweated and said, "Cough, cough. I have been poor since I was young. I haven't married yet." Li Zixuan was speechless. Ma Zhou looked like he was at least 26 or 27 years old. In modern times, there was no problem. However, in ancient times, it was very problematic for someone to be unmarried at such an age. Alas, he could only blame himself for not caring about his appearance. His image was too poor. Then where is Brother Ma staying now? Ma Zhou was even more embarrassed. He coughed embarrassedly and said, "Cough, cough, cough. I used to stay in an inn. However, I used up all my traveling expenses a few days ago. I've been staying here for the past 2 days." Li Zixuan looked around. There wasn't even a bed in the room. This Ma Zhou probably slept on the table at night. The future prime minister of the Tang Empire was actually living such a miserable life. Li Zixuan frowned and said, "How can this be? I'll ask Faubert to rent a house near the workshop for Brother Ma. A person can only work more efficiently when he has a good rest." Ma Zhou hurriedly cupped his hands and thanked him gratefully. After chatting with Ma Zhou for a while, Li Zixuan pushed the door open and left. Chapter 171. After exiting the back hall, he bumped into Faubert. Li Zixuan briefly told him about the newly established Strange Culture Department and asked him to cooperate with Ma Zhou's work more in the future. He also repeatedly told him to improve Ma Zhou's treatment so that he could work in the workshop with peace of mind. After explaining, Faubert gave Li Zixuan 2 things. One was a horseshoe, and the other was the blood transfusion syringe that Li Zixuan asked him to make a long time ago. Young master, this is the horseshoe and syringe that you asked me to make before. This horseshoe is quite easy to make. Just follow the blueprint. As for the syringe and needle, I try my best, but this is the best I could make. Faubert handed the things to Li Zixuan and said with a bitter smile. Li Zixuan took a look, and suddenly his forehead was full of black lines. This F*King needle was almost as thick as a matchstick. Was it trying to stab someone to death? If it was a little thicker, it would be almost as thick as a human's blood vessel. The syringe was nothing to complain about. In this era, there was no rubber. Li Zixuan also thought for a long time before he suggested Faubert to wash the animal intestines, sterilize it with alcohol, and then rinse it with distilled water. Then, connect it to the syringe to replace the syringe. His previous set of equipment could not only be used to concentrate wine, but also to make distilled water. Li Zixuan also understood that the process of making this set of blood transfusion equipment was very troublesome. After all, every step had very strict requirements for the operator. It could not be contaminated. Therefore, he never urged Faubert for so long. But now, this syringe really made him a little dissatisfied. Faubert, can this syringe be thinner? Like the thickness of an embroidery needle? Li Zixuan asked somewhat unwillingly. Faubert smiled bitterly. Young master, this is already the thinnest needle we can make. Don't think that embroidery needles can be made very thin. They are made with an iron rod and then slowly polished. Your needle is made with an iron pipe and then polished. At most, it can only be this thin. If it is any thinner, I'm afraid it will break in the middle. Li Zixuan did not want to force Faubert anymore. In the end, the industrial foundation was too weak. Many professional mechanical equipment workshops did not have, and it was all done by hand. It was not bad to be able to make it like this. If it was painful, then so be it. He believed that Faubert should be able to endure this pain. All right then. Thanks for your hard work, Faubert. Li Zixuan waved his hand, took the horseshoe and syringe, and went home. When he got home, Li Zixuan went straight to his study to prepare a set of paper-making equipment. The current paper-making technology of the Tang Dynasty was still passed down from the improved paper-making technology of the Eastern Han Dynasty. At that time, he used tree bark, hemp, rags, fishing nets, and other raw materials to make paper. Compared to the paper made from plant fibers before the Eastern Han Dynasty, the cost of this paper was indeed much cheaper. However, because the paper-making process was completely manual, the cost was still very high, and it was not something that ordinary people could afford. In the relevant history books of the Tang Dynasty, it was recorded that Huai Su practiced calligraphy with a wooden board and became a master of cursive calligraphy. When Bai Juyi was young, he wrote one stroke at a time. He did not dare to be careless because a piece of paper was a few days' worth of food. Thus, it could be seen that the price of paper in the Tang Dynasty was still very high. Li Zixuan planned to draw a set of long net paper-making machine. This was a patent that the British brothers Fourlinier bought from the inventor of the paper-making machine and gave it to Tang Jin to improve the design. In 1803, they successfully made the first long net paper-making machine that could make paper, also known as the Fourlinier paper-making machine. Its main feature was that it had a conveyor belt-shaped part made up of endless nets. It was composed of the wet part, including the headbox, shaper, and press part, and the dry part, drying, calendaring, and coiling. At that time, the power source of this paper-making equipment relied on the steam engine that what had improved. However, with the current industrial foundation of the Tang Dynasty, there were still many difficulties in making a steam engine. Therefore, Li Zixuan made some changes. In the transmission and refining parts, some linkage structures were added so that this part could be replaced by animal power. Compared to the current traditional paper-making workshop, not only would the speed and efficiency of paper-making be greatly improved, but the cost would also be lower. For other people, drawing such a complicated set of blueprints would take at least 2 to 3 days. However, Li Zixuan was different. He had abnormal mental strength that exceeded that of ordinary people, as well as skillful control of his strength. When he drew the blueprints, he did not stop at all. He was completely like a printing machine. After nearly 2 hours, Li Zixuan finally straightened his body. He shook his sore wrist and let out a long breath. Looking at the stack of blueprints in front of him, he smiled with satisfaction. Then he called Sam Bao and asked him to send it to the workshop and pass it to Faubert. "Young master, you told me not to let anyone disturb you while you were drawing. In the end, you were drawing until now. You didn't even have lunch. I'll get the kitchen to cook for you." At this time, Xiaoxi ran over and said with a distressed expression. Only then did Li Zixuan look at the sky. It was already past lunchtime. He then remembered that when he came back, he did tell Xiaoxi not to let anyone disturb him while he was drawing. Who knew that he had been drawing for so long that he even forgot to eat lunch? His stomach also let out 2 goo-goo sounds of protest. Sigh, I'm not qualified to be a rich second generation. How can a rich second generation starve? Li Zixuan criticized himself in his heart. He looked at Xiaoxi's beautiful face and said, "Okay, Xiaoxi, go quickly. I'm starving." Xiaoxi obeyed and left. Li Zixuan admired the little girl's delicate back and could not help but sigh. It's so good to have a little girl like her by my side. Clothes will be handed to me. Food will be served to me. The most important thing is that she's beautiful. When I have nothing to do, it's nice to look at her. Unknowingly, Li Zixuan was walking further and further down the path of feudal society. He did not look back at all. After finishing his lunch in a whirlwind manner, Li Zixuan was just about to lie down and rest when Lan ran over. Brother, Lan Er's little gray was bullied by the big white horse. Quickly go and save it." Li Zixuan was speechless. A dog could be bullied by a horse. What kind of nonsense was this? "Xiaohi, what's going on? Isn't the white horse at home, recuperating recently?" Li Zixuan looked at Xiaohi, who was behind Lan Er, and asked. That day when the big white horse was injured and carried back, Wang Zhong was very perceptive and took the initiative to invite the best veterinarian in the city to treat its injuries. Li Zixuan was surprised when he heard about this. He did not expect that there would be a professional veterinarian in the Tang Dynasty. Xiaohi looked at Lan Er and hesitated for a long time before saying to Li Zixuan, "Young master, the big white horse's injuries were not serious before. It's already recovered today." Little Gray was still teasing it like before, but in the end... Chapter 172. After Xiaohi explained for a long time, Li Zixuan finally understood. According to the stable's groom, Little Gray saw that the big white horse's hooves were injured a few days ago, so it couldn't move. Therefore, it came up with the idea of flirting with the big white horse. From time to time, it would come to the side of the big white horse and harass it in all kinds of ways. The white horse was indeed powerless and could only snore in protest. Little Gray tried a few times and found that the white horse really couldn't do anything to him, so he became more and more aggressive. There were even a few times when he ran into the white horse's trough to pee. In the end, it was a tragedy today. This white horse not only held grudges, it was also quite intelligent. Although it had already recovered from its injuries today, when it saw Little Gray strolling over as usual, it deliberately pretended that its injuries were not healed. It lay on the ground, waiting for Little Gray to come over and harass it. As expected, Little Gray fell into the trap. It started to flirt with the white horse. Suddenly, the white horse jumped up and kicked Little Gray. Little Gray was kicked into the air and experienced what it meant to be a flying dog. After it landed, it lay on the ground and cried out in pain. Previously, because the white horse was injured, the servants didn't tie it up. However, today, the white horse suddenly went berserk and relentlessly chased after Little Gray all over the courtyard. Lan ran over to her brother to ask for help. After all, this big white horse was Li Zixuan's mount. Li Zixuan shook his head and laughed in spite of himself. He had no sympathy for Little Gray, this little rascal. This little thing had obviously dug its own grave, so it deserved its fate. However, he couldn't let the big white horse continue to cause trouble. "All right, Lan stop fooling around. Big brother will accompany you to take a look." Yeah. Lan hurriedly stood up excitedly and pulled Li Zixuan away. "Wait, I'll go get something." Li Zixuan brought the horseshoes to the west side of the backyard. Sure enough, he saw Little Gray being chased by the big white horse beside the stable. The little thing turned its head and barked at the white horse as it ran. Lisa Schwan was speechless. This guy was about to die, yet he was still acting like a bitch. He really didn't know where his courage came from. In fact, the big white horse obviously didn't use all its strength to chase. It probably also wanted to tease Little Gray. Lisa Schwan put his thumb and middle finger together, placed them in front of his tongue, and blew a long whistle. The big white horse heard the whistle and stopped. It turned its neck to look, and when it saw that it was Lisa Schwan, it immediately ignored Little Gray and happily ran to Lisa Schwan's side. It used its head to intimately rub against Lisa Schwan's arm. When Little Gray saw that the white horse was no longer chasing after it, it excitedly barked twice. Then, it ran to Lon Er's side and rubbed against Lon Er's trousers. It whimpered pitifully. Lon Er squatted down and hugged it. She complained to Lisa Schwan, "Big brother, your white horse is too much. Little Gray is so cute, yet it has the heart to bully it." Lisa Schwan was speechless. There was no need to be so protective. This matter was obviously caused by the little thing's own death. How could the white horse be blamed? At this time, the white horse also snorted, as if it was protesting. Lisa Schwan touched the mane on the white horse's neck and said to Lon Er, Okay, the white horse won't bully your Little Gray in the future. Xiaohe, go call a few servants over to help. I want to put on shoes for the horse." Xiaohe was confused and asked, "Young master, why does the horse need to wear shoes?" Lisa Schwan waved his hand and said, "You will know in a while. Go call the servants first." Oh, Xiaohe didn't dare to ask anymore. She went to the front yard with a stomach full of doubts. A moment later, Xiaohe called over 4 strong servants, including Sanbao. Lisa Schwan tied the white horse's reins to the tree next to him and instructed the servants to flip the horse over so that the horse's hooves faced the sky. Then, he asked the 4 of them to hold the white horse down. Lisa Schwan personally went up to nail the horse's hooves. The big T-shaped iron nail on the horse's hooves was about 5 centimeters long. It was nailed directly into the horse's hooves. Lon Er, Xiaoshi, and Xiaohe screamed at the side and quickly covered their eyes, not daring to look. Lisa Schwan shook his head with a smile and continued to do the same thing. He nailed horseshoes on the other 3 hooves of the white horse, and then let the people let go of the white horse. The white horse rolled on the ground and stood up directly, as if nothing had happened. Lisa Schwan stroked the horse's mane and said with a smile, "Okay, from now on, I will call you Whitey. Ha! Now that you have shoes to wear, you don't have to worry about your feet getting hurt anymore." The white horse used its head to knock Lisa Schwan's arm. No one knew if it liked this name or not. Brother, why isn't the white horse injured?" Lon Er opened her eyes and saw Whitey standing there perfectly fine. It didn't look like it was injured at all. She couldn't help but ask curiously. Lisa Schwan stroked Lon Er's little head and said with a smile, "Of course it's fine. Brother is just putting on shoes for it, not killing it." In fact, the dark part of the horse's hooves was a very thick layer of hard cuticle. There were no nerves or blood vessels in it, so the horse didn't feel any pain at all. The reason why Whitey was injured on the road last time was mainly because it was running too fast. The vines directly pierced through the cuticle and hurt its flesh. Lon Er made an "oh" sound, but still didn't understand. But why is brother putting on shoes for it? Then why do you have to wear shoes, Lon Er? It hurts my feet if I don't wear shoes. If a horse doesn't wear shoes for a long time, it will also hurt its feet. Whitey was injured because of this last time. After wearing shoes, Whitey can run on all kinds of terrain and won't have to worry about pricking its feet anymore. In fact, the hard cuticle on a horse's hooves was equivalent to a human's fingernail. Naturally, the fingernail would be worn down when the foot rubbed against the ground. However, the fingernail would also continue to grow, so a natural balance was maintained. If a human broke this balance, for example, by keeping a horse in a soft field, the fingernail would grow wildly. At this time, if a horse was loaded with heavy objects and ran for long distances, its fingernail would be quickly worn down and split open. This way, the horse would become a cripple and unable to walk. It was just like how a human's fingernail could no longer be used to scratch things. Putting horseshoes on a horse could solve this problem very well. It could slow down the wear and tear of the horse's hooves and greatly extend the horse's life. After hearing this, Lana made an "oh" sound like a little adult and nodded. Then, she suddenly said excitedly, "Then, brother, can you make a pair of shoes like this for Lana's little gray to wear?" Lisa Schwann fainted. This little dog's feet didn't have a thick layer of hard cuticle like a horse's hooves. If this nail went in, "Little sister, you want to eat dog meat, right?" Woof, woof, woof. Little Gray seemed to have sensed danger. It quickly broke free from Lana's embrace and ran away. Chapter 173. Father, this is the magic of pinyin. All words can be marked with pinyin. As long as the children who have just entered school spend some time learning pinyin, they can rely on self-study to recognize all the words. Li Tai spoke frankly in the Sweet Nectar Hall. From the looks of it, he had probably just finished teaching Li Er about pinyin. As for Li Chengxian, that fellow was hiding in the Eastern Palace reading novels. After all, after Journey to the West, he had not read for a long time. Li Er glanced at the paper on the table. Although his expression did not change, his heart was in turmoil. From a certain point of view, the importance of pinyin was no less than that of Li Zishuan's invention of the curved plow. Moreover, once this kind of dictionary was published, the number of literate people in the world would increase tenfold. At that time, he would be able to promote a large number of commoner officials to deal with the aristocratic families. His descendants would also no longer be reprimanded by the aristocratic families. Li Er was a natural strategist. He quickly understood the deeper meaning of pinyin. He could not help but excitedly say, "Good! What a good pinyin! Qin Ke, this matter is of great significance. You and Chengxian must pay attention. If you do not have enough people, we can have Kong Yingda transfer a group of professors from the Imperial College to assist you." Li Tai smiled and said, "Many thanks, father, but I and Big Brother have more than enough people." The father and son chatted for a while more before Li Tai clasped his hands and excused himself. He also had to go back and choose people to help Ma Zhou write the dictionary. Li Er looked at Li Tai's plump back and smiled warmly. A moment later, his eyes suddenly focused, and he said, "Zhao Song, present. Send someone to hurry Li Zishuan. Why hasn't he presented the locust control strategy we had him right last time? Could it be that this kid forgot?" Li Er said, somewhat exasperated that Zhao Song had failed to meet his expectations. "Yes, father." Zhao Song held back his laughter and slowly retreated. He had never seen anyone who dared to stand Li Er up. However, Li Er only reprimanded him and did not punish him. From this, it could be seen that Li County's male emperor favored him greatly. The moon hung in the treetops, and the occasional meowing of a few cats on the roof could be heard. In the western courtyard of the Li residence, the study was still brightly lit. Xiaoxi was waiting on Li Zishuan as she gracefully grinded the noodles for him. The candlelight shone on the little girl's beautiful face, making her look even prettier. The fragrance of a girl who had just finished bathing also filled the air. In the dead of night, the candlelight shone brightly. A single man and a single woman were in the same room, but there was no ambiguous atmosphere. Li Zishuan also did not experience the pleasure of having a beautiful woman join him. He was bent over a few tables and writing at a rapid speed. In the afternoon, Li Er sent a eunuch over to Li Zishuan to urge him to write, which gave Li Jingma and his wife a big fright. Li Zishuan's father sternly scolded Li Zishuan and told him that no matter what, he had to write the memorial that Li Er requested. Although Mrs. Li loved her son, on this matter, she still chose to stand on the same side as her husband. Li Zishuan was embarrassed by the scolding. If the eunuch did not rush him today, he would have forgotten that Li Er asked him to write a detailed plan for curing locusts. "You can't blame me for this. I've been busy with classes recently." In the study, Li Zishuan wrote while venting his resentment in his heart. Swish, swish, swish. Only the sound of the brush rubbing against the paper and the light breathing of the two people could be heard in the room. After half an hour, Li Zishuan put away his brush and stretched his waist. He laughed and said, "Haha, it's done. Xiaoxi, let's sleep." "Ah, young master, Young mistress is not married yet? How can you? How can you do this? Xiaoxi's hand that was grinding the ink trembled. Her other hand quickly covered her chest as she said anxiously with a blushing face. Cough, cough. I meant to say that we should go back to our own rooms to sleep. Little girl, what are you thinking? Do you want to sleep with me so badly? Li Zishuan placed his hand on his forehead and was speechless. However, when he saw Xiaoxi's blushing face, he suddenly had the intention to tease her. No way. Xiaoxi was anxious. She quickly packed up her ink slab and brush and was about to run away. Li Zishuan laughed behind her. Xiaoxi, don't forget to get someone to send this memorial to the palace tomorrow. I know. Look, this, The Legend of a Mortal's Journey. Although the beginning is plain and not as exciting as Journey to the West, the more you read, the better it gets. I feel like I am like Han Li, embarking on a long and difficult path of cultivation. In the East Palace, Li Chengxian held the manuscript of The Legend of a Mortal's Journey and praised it. After a few minutes, he said in annoyance, "Why is it gone? This mysterious little bottle just came out and it's gone?" Did Li Zishuan purposely stop writing at this point? Li Chengxian's annoyed look was similar to how people in a modern world would feel when they met some unscrupulous author and the story was cut off at the climax. The helplessness of love and hate. However, you can't blame Li Zishuan for this. He wrote 20 to 30 chapters in half a day. It's already very productive, all right? What else do you want? Your Highness, it's getting late. You should rest. Li Chengxian's personal maid carefully bowed and said. Li Chengxian looked at the sky and nodded. He handed the manuscript to the maid and said with a smile, "All right, I'll go to sleep now." Yaner, call a servant tomorrow and have him send this manuscript to Ma Zhou of the Strange Taste Pavilion Workshop. After reading more than 20 chapters of The Legend of a Mortal's Journey, Li Chengxian still wanted more. However, at the same time, he was also looking forward to Ma Zhou quickly producing the newspaper. When that time came, everyone in Chang and would be trapped like him. It was so hard to wait for a new chapter. Li Chengxian's mentality of wanting to drag everyone down with him was very similar to those unscrupulous readers in the modern world who had been tricked many times. Yaner took the manuscript and hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes." The next day, after breakfast, Li Zishuan and Iron Egg went out of the house to school. Lan Er had a temper when she woke up today and didn't come with them. Li Zishuan didn't force her. When Lan Er cried and shouted that she wanted to go to the Imperial College to attend classes, Li Zishuan had already guessed that this little girl would slack off for 3 days and dry her net for 2 days. Although this little girl didn't persist for 3 days, it didn't matter. He didn't expect this little sister of his to be knowledgeable and become the top scorer in the exams. Iron Egg carried more than 30 textbooks and walked behind Li Zishuan with difficulty. This couldn't be considered as Li Zishuan abusing a child. Okay? This was also a kind of training for Iron Egg. After all, Iron Egg had persevered for so many days. He could still carry this weight. "Hello, sir. Hello, sir." As soon as Li Zishuan entered the Imperial College, he happened to meet 2 students from the School of Mathematics and Mathematics. Being greeted respectfully by the students made Li Zishuan feel a little smug. His vanity was greatly satisfied. He clasped his hands behind his back and pretended to be a master. He nodded pretentiously and said, Then he directly passed by them and rushed to the School of Mathematics and Mathematics. "Senior Iron Egg, come here. Let me help you carry the books." "Let me help you too." The 2 students were shocked by Li Zishuan's arrogance. After a while, they came back to their senses. Seeing that Iron Egg had memorized so many books, they hurriedly came over to help. This was Sir's first core disciple. If they had a good relationship with him, they might be able to get some exam questions from him in the future. Then wouldn't it be easier for them to pass the monthly exams? "Thank you for your kindness, junior brother, but I don't need your help. This is also the homework that Master left for me. I have to memorize it myself." Iron Egg wiped his sweat and gratefully refused. Then he quickly went to catch up with Li Zishuan. Memorizing textbooks is also considered homework. The 2 students stood behind, scratching their heads with a confused look on their faces. Brother Su, brother Yu, why don't you go to the school? If you don't go now, you will be late. At this time, a student ran from behind and said breathlessly, "Ah, run." The two students hurriedly ran away. Chapter 174. Chonyo, why you two are here? When he arrived at the classroom, he saw the tall and burly Chung Chumo and the refined Qin Huayu sitting at the back. Li Zixuan recalled that day when Chung Chumo and the other old generals had entrusted their sons to the school of mathematics. However, he didn't expect that these second-generation generals would come today. Chung Chumo hung his head and said weakly, "Brother, I didn't want to come." "Brother, I didn't want to come either, but my father said that if I didn't come, he would break my legs. I thought he was just scaring me, but who knew that he was serious this morning? Even my mother couldn't hold him back. Fortunately, I ran fast, or else I would be lying in the Imperial Medical Department now. Sigh, Xiao Xian, we used to be brothers. Now you suddenly became my teacher for no reason. This is so King disgusting." When Li Zixuan heard Chung Chumo's complaints, he almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect Chung Chumo to be so cruel to his own son. He was about to comfort him when Qin Huayu said with a smile, "Chonyo, Uncle Chung is doing this for your own good. Since you're here, you should learn well. Moreover, I just borrowed the notes of other classmates and found that Xiao Xian's new mathematics has many merits." Stop. Huayu, don't say any more. Your grades are good, so of course you don't care. But look at me, old Chung. How do I look like a scholar? I just heard that the last 5 in the monthly exam will have to clean the classroom and enter the roll of shame. I really don't know which son of a bitch came up with this rotten idea. It's going to kill me. Chung Chumo didn't wait for Qin Huayu to finish and interrupted him. His voice was very loud. 80% of the people in the classroom heard him. The noisy classroom instantly quieted down. Other than Chung Chumo and the other 2 newcomers, all the other students looked at this man who dared to speak so arrogantly. Li Zixuan's face darkened. He kicked Chung Chumo's thigh and said, "CK, I was the one who came up with this idea. If you're in the last 5 this month, you'll have to clean my dorm for 2 months." Chung Chumo staggered from the kick. When he heard Li Zixuan's words, his eyes widened in shock. He stretched out his hand and stammered, Hey, Xiao Xian, don't. What kind of relationship do we have? Is there a need to be like this? Just treat me as a fart and let me go." Ha. When the students saw Chung Chumo's antics, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Many of them knew the identities of Chung Chumo and the others. Those who didn't know found out after asking them in private. They thought that these second-generation generals were all arrogant, but they didn't expect Chung Chumo to be so funny. He was no different from ordinary people like them. Li Zixuan ignored Chung Chumo. He looked at the tanned and fat youth beside Qin Huayu and asked, "You're Yuchi Baolin, right?" The little fatty scratched his head and laughed. Yes, I'm Yuchi Baolin. You can call me Baolin, sir." Li Zixuan nodded and encouraged him. "Okay, Baolin, study hard. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask Iron Egg or me directly." Chung Chumo muttered at the side. "TSK, what's there to learn from him? In the end, he still has to fight with me for the last place." Li Zixuan was so angry that he turned around and slapped him on the head. "If you really get last place in the exam, we'll see how Uncle Chung will deal with you. I won't recognize you as a disgraceful brother." Chung Chumo rubbed his head like a wronged wife. He looked at him with an aggrieved expression and muttered, "Little Xian, you're not kind. I've always been so good to you. How can you be like this?" "Like what? Even I have to do as Sir says. What else do you want, ugly ox?" Li Tai had just arrived at the academy on time. He heard Chung Chumo's aggrieved complaints and couldn't help but interrupt. Chung Chumo looked at Li Tai in surprise. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He held his forehead with his hand and sighed. It seemed like he had completely accepted his fate. "All right, let's start class. Students, take out your homework. Iron Egg, go collect your homework and pass it to me." The sound of a bell and drum came from outside. Li Zixuan had hired a night watchman to ring the bell for the academy. When the bell rang, Li Zixuan started a new day of classes. "Yes, master. Iron Egg stood up and collected the homework one by one. He had just handed out new books to all the students when he arrived in the morning. In addition, he was Li Zexuan's eldest disciple, so the students treated him very well. After a while, Li Zexuan took everyone's homework and skimmed through it. After a while, he frowned and shouted, "Wang Ming, get up!" Wang Ming sat down and waited for Li Zexuan to praise him. He had thought for a long time before coming up with the homework. However, judging from Li Zexuan's tone, it was obvious that he wasn't going to praise him. Wang Ming stood up in shock and stuttered, "Yes, sir." "Tell us, what method did you write in your homework?" Wang Ming sweated and said, I wrote that if you saw the ginkgo tree down, then connect a few rulers on the ground to measure the height of the tree, you would be able to get the height of the tree." Ha ha ha. The students burst into laughter after hearing this. Chung Chumo was also amused. He laughed and shouted, "Ha, Brother Wang Ming, with you here, it seems like I don't have to be the last in the exam." Ha! Li Zexuan asked everyone to be quiet. He looked at Wang Ming and said, "Now do you know that you were wrong? The reason why I'm teaching you mathematics is so that you can apply what you've learned in your daily life. I don't want you to be like before, relying on brute force for everything." Wang Ming hesitated for a while and said, "But my dad said that when he was doing carpentry, he used this method to measure the length of the tree trunk." Li Zexuan was speechless. After wasting a lot of time with Wang Ming, Li Zexuan finally convinced this one-track-minded guy. Then, he began to evaluate the winners of the homework. All the students perked up and listened attentively. After much deliberation, I think that Meng Wenhao did the best homework. His method was to measure the length of the shadow of the person and the tree at the same time. Then, he multiplied the length of the shadow of the person and the actual height of the person to get the true length of the ginkgo tree. Other than Meng Wenhao, Li Tai's method was also outstanding. He made the person's eyes stick close to the ground and then moved a ruler until the top of the ruler was in a straight line with the person's eyes and the tip of the tree. Then, according to the ratio of the distance between the person's eyes and the ruler's distance, he multiplied the length of the ruler to get the true height of the ginkgo tree. Both of their methods were the smartest and the best. However, I think that Meng Wenhao's method is simpler and more accurate. He deserves to be first. Let's give a round of applause to these two students. Chapter 175. Clap, clap, clap. Regardless of whether it was sincere congratulations or fake flattery, there was still a warm round of applause in the classroom. Meng Wenhao clenched his fist and was so excited that his face was red. He did it. He really did it. His hard work for the day was not in vain. At this moment, he really wanted to shout to the sky. Ku Shiqing, who was sitting not far away from him, looked at him in surprise. At the same time, a sense of crisis rose in his heart. At present, the waters in the School of Mathematics were getting deeper and deeper. It would not be easy to get first place in the exams like before. Li Tai sat in the front and was a little depressed. This method was discussed by him and a few mathematics experts for a long time before they came up with such an answer. He was very confident that he would get first place, but he did not expect that there would be an accident. However, he was also very impressed with Meng Wenhao's answer. Hence, the unhappiness in his heart quickly dissipated in the warm applause. Li Zexuan stood in front and looked at Meng Wenhao. He was a little emotional. He did not expect this child to be able to think of such an answer. He really could not underestimate the wisdom of the ancients. The applause gradually stopped, and Li Zexuan began a new day of teaching. What was different for the previous time was that today's class would have a 15-minute break every 45 minutes. This made the students more energetic in class, and the class was livelier than before. Li Zexuan believed that as time passed and they got used to this way of teaching, their learning progress would be much faster than before. Taiji Palace, Sweet Du Hall. After the morning court, Li Er gathered Zhongsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui to the Sweet Du Hall to discuss the plan to eliminate the locusts. Li Er knelt on the seat of honor, while Zhongsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui knelt on the cushions below. Li Er looked up and asked lightly, how are the three of you thinking these few days? Do you have any countermeasures for next year's locust plague? Zhang Sun Wuji took the lead and said, Your Majesty, since Your Majesty has already firmly believed that there will be a locust plague next year, I think that the most important thing now is to increase the storage of food in case of emergency. Li Er nodded and looked at Fang Xianling and asked, What do you think? Your Majesty, I estimate that the Ministry of Revenue doesn't have much money left. I'm afraid that it will be difficult to deal with this locust plague. I'm afraid that Brother Fuji's plan won't work. After some thought, Li Er explained just how difficult the imperial court situation was. It's true that the Bureau of Revenue currently has no more than 4 million strings of coins left. Adding on the various expenditures, we can only use a little more than 1 million strings of coins. Relying on this amount of money to buy food will not be enough for the people of the Great Tang to survive the plague of locusts. Duru Hui could not help but say, Your Majesty, this old subject did not think that the finances of the imperial court would be so tight. From today onwards, this old subject will voluntarily not take any salary from the imperial court. This subject is also willing to do so. Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling couldn't help but agree. Li Er waved his hand and refused. My three beloved ministers, you have followed me to conquer the world and have suffered a lot. Now that the world is peaceful, how can I let you suffer? Let's continue discussing the locust plague. When Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and Duru Hui heard this, their eyes reddened. They were extremely touched. At this moment, Duru Hui stood up and said, Your Majesty, why don't you mobilize all the wealthy merchants to donate money? The imperial court can use this to tide over this crisis. It had to be said that old Du's idea was quite advanced. However, he had neglected a fact. But in what name will the imperial court use to mobilize the wealthy merchants to donate money? Li Er's eyes lit up at first. However, after a while, they dimmed again. The reason for the donation was indeed a big problem. Duru Hui was taken aback when he heard this. He immediately reacted. The prophecy of the locust plague could not be made known to the world. Naturally, they could not use the name of the locust plague to get people to donate money. However, if that was the case, what convincing excuse could they find? The hall fell into silence. The three important ministers all calmed down and pondered carefully. Li Er was a little disappointed. He did not expect that the three ministers he relied on the most were also at a loss. Was there really no other way? Your Majesty, Li Xiansheng has asked Duke Lu to send in a secret memorial. At this moment, a chamberlain ran in with a memorial in his hands. He bowed and reported to Li Er. Li Er perked up and scolded jokingly. This brat finally sent the memorial over. Quickly hand it over. If it's not written well, I will not let him off easily. The chamberlain quickly did as he was told and handed the memorial to Li Er. Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and Duru Hui looked at each other. They were very surprised by Li Er's reaction. After about half an hour, Li Er put down the memorial and looked at the three old ministers. He smiled and said, Li Zishuan has sent in a memorial. He mentioned some locust control strategies. My dear ministers, please take a look and see if they are feasible. The chamberlain took the memorial and handed it to Zhang Sun Wuji. The three of them gathered together and began to read it carefully. They saw the words written on it. I have thought hard and obtained 3 locust control strategies. I would like to present them to Your Majesty for your reference. Firstly, I believe that since the imperial court does not have much money left, why not send a large ship filled with silk and porcelain to the small countries in the Southern Sea to exchange for food? I have heard that the weather in the Southern Sea is extremely hot. Rice matures 3 times a year, and the price of food is extremely cheap. Those uncivilized people have never seen such beautiful silk and exquisite porcelain of our great Tang. A bolt of silk can be exchanged for 5 dan of food. Actually, even if our great Tang has tens of millions of gold in our treasury, I do not agree to purchase food from within the country. That is just robbing the east wall to pay the west wall. It is no different from some grain merchants hoarding food in advance. In the end, The ones who will starve are the local people. Secondly, I believe that the imperial court can issue a decree to encourage the people to raise chickens, ducks, geese, and other poultry through tax reduction. When the number of these poultry reaches a certain level, it can guarantee that the crops will not be harmed by the locusts when the locusts come. What the imperial court has to pay is just a portion of the tax for the coming year. Otherwise, when the locusts come and the people are unprepared, all the crops will be eaten by the locusts. At that time, not only will the imperial court not be able to collect 10% of the tax, they will also have to fork out additional money to provide relief. Thirdly, I suggest that Your Majesty issue a decree to allow the officials of the various provinces of Great Tang to set up warehouses to store the food collected this year. When the locusts come next year, the various provinces will open the warehouses to provide relief. This will prevent the transportation of food and huge losses during the journey. I have thought for half a night and came up with these 3 strategies. If there is anything wrong with them, I hope that Your Majesty will not blame me. A child's words carry no harm. A child's words carry no harm. Zhang Sun Wuji, Fong Xianling, and Du Ruhui originally thought that Li Zexuan's words were very reasonable. However, when they saw the last sentence, they almost laughed out loud. To dare to write such a joke in a secret memorial to Li Er, this kid is really bold. Chapter 176. Within the Sweet Dew Hall, Li Er saw the expressions of the 3 ministers and knew what they were thinking. He smiled helplessly and said, "What do you think of Li Zexuan's 3 strategies for controlling locusts?" Zhang Sun Wuji stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, I don't know much about the situation of the small countries in the Southern Sea. As for the poultry's ability to exterminate locusts, I also have my doubts. However, I feel that Li Xianan's 3rd plan is very feasible." Li Er nodded and said with a smile, "Li Zexuan said that the situation of the small countries in the Southern Sea is true. A few years ago, I saw in some of the previous dynasties' nautical records that the rice in some of the countries in the Southern Sea does indeed ripen 3 times a year. The local grain prices are also very cheap. As early as the Sui Dynasty, the imperial court had already started to establish maritime communications with Taiwan. Based on historical records, the Sui Dynasty had at least 3 voyages to Taiwan Island. They were in the 3rd year of day, 607, the 4th year of day, 608, and the 6th year of day, 610. From this, it could be seen that the shipbuilding and ocean navigation technology of the time were extremely advanced in the world. Fong Xianling couldn't help but say, "Since there is such a country, then I think that Li Zexuan's first strategy is completely feasible. The imperial court can send the navy to escort the caravan to Nanyang in exchange for food." The latter half of Li Xianan's words aren't wrong. If we were to purchase rations from the other regions of Great Tang, the locust plague would inevitably lead to a shortage of rations. Thus, importing rations from outside is the best choice. Li Er nodded with relief and smiled. In that case, I will order Li Shaogong, Prince of Hejian, to prepare a navy in the near future. I will order the Ministry of Revenue to take out 500,000 strings of cash to purchase a batch of silk and porcelain. I will also recruit a caravan from the people to go south with a navy in June to trade with the Nanyang countries in exchange for food. The 3 old officials said respectfully at the same time, "Your Majesty is wise." Li Er continued, "As for the ability of poultry to kill locusts, there is no need to doubt it. Previously, Li Zexuan told me that an adult chicken can eat up to 300 locusts a day. 20 to 30 chickens can more or less guarantee that there will be no locusts in 1 mu of land. At the time, I didn't believe it, but later I sent someone to the imperial plantation to ask the old farmer and verified that it was true." The 3 people in the hall looked at each other in surprise. In the end, Du Ruhui stood up and bowed. "Your Majesty, this old subject believes that Li Xianan's 3 strategy for dealing with locusts should be implemented as soon as possible. With such a talent in the younger generation of my Great Tang, a golden age is certain to continue. This old subject congratulates Your Majesty. Your subjects congratulate Your Majesty." Fang Xianling and Zhang Senwuji also cupped their hands and praised. The two of them were shrewd, old men. They knew that Li Er had been worried about the next generation of talents of the empire. At this moment, they could make Li Er happy. Not only did it not violate their principles, but could also harmonize the relationship between the ruler and his subjects. Wasn't it killing two birds with one stone? Ha ha ha. Li Er laughed heartily. Du Ruhui's words had struck a chord in his heart. He swept away the gloominess from a few days ago and smiled. Minister Du is right. The great Tang will have to rely on these young people in the future. People of our generation are already old. Since the three of you agree, then the three of you should cooperate with me to implement the 3 strategies for dealing with locusts as soon as possible. This subject obeys the decree. At noon, the mathematics school was about to start classes. The Imperial College had its own canteen. After all, there were many students from outside the city. Of course, the Imperial College did not force the students to eat in the canteen. Therefore, many students from the city chose to go home for lunch. Huayu, how is Uncle Qin's health recently? After class, Li Zixuan found Qin Huayu and asked. Qin Huayu was still thinking about the lessons in the morning. Unlike Cheng Chumo, who had been fooling around outside since he was young, the Qin residence's upbringing was extremely strict. Qin Huayu had been ordered by Qin Xiong to study hard at home since he was young. Therefore, although he was the second generation of a military family, he was more like a gentle scholar. This was the first time he had heard of this new mathematics class. Even now, he was still immersed in it. Li Zixuan saw that he was in a daze and repeated it again. Qin Huayu was instantly awakened and said in astonishment, "Ah? Oh, thank you for your concern. Although my father's health is not as good as before, he is much better after these days of recuperation." Li Zixuan did not know whether to laugh or cry at the way Qin Huayu addressed him. This Qin Huayu was still immersed in the lesson and had not changed his identity. Huayu, after class, you could just call me Little Xian. If you still call me Mister, wouldn't it be too distant? That's right, that's right. Cheng Chumo quickly echoed from the side. Even in class, this fellow was unwilling to call Li Zixuan Mister, let alone after class. Okay, then I'll call you Little Xian after class. Qin Huayu was much more awake now and quickly said, Huayu, I'll go check on Uncle Qin tomorrow afternoon. Send someone to inform Daoist Sunday. If Uncle Qin's blood has been completely replenished, then that's even better. If it's still as weak as before, then I'll give Uncle Qin a blood transfusion. I've already built the tools for the blood transfusion. Li Tai also came over at this time. Hearing this, his eyes widened, and he said in disbelief, Little Xian, this blood transfusion can be used to treat illnesses? How come I've never heard of it? Li Zixuan looked at him indifferently and said, Qinke, why are you so impudent and not calling me Mister anymore? Li Tai said bluntly, didn't you just say that I'll call you Little Xian after class to avoid alienation? Li Zixuan was speechless. This little fatty really didn't treat him as an outsider. That's right, Little Xian. I heard from my dad that you're going to give Uncle Qin a blood transfusion. Unfortunately, you didn't have the tools before. This time I have to go and see. Cheng Chumo said excitedly. I'll go too. Li Tai was also very curious about this novel treatment method. You two still have class tomorrow. Li Zixuan said unhappily. Cheng Chumo curled his lips and said, Then why don't you have class tomorrow? In the future, you two will have self-study in the afternoon. Assistant lecturer Su will be in charge. If you have anything you don't understand, you can ask Mr. Su. Li Zixuan expressed that his reason for being lazy was very good. Su Hongji's foundation and talent in mathematics were originally very strong. In the end, Li Zixuan's new mathematics still had a lot of shadows of traditional mathematics. Su Hongji was able to comprehend by analogy. After studying the textbook for a few days and asking Li Zixuan about some doubts, he had already digested most of the elementary mathematics. Therefore, Li Zixuan dared to be so lazy. Cheng Chumo, Yuqi Baolin, and Li Tai were all speechless. After a while, Cheng Chumo rolled his eyes and said smugly, I'm going to be sick tomorrow and need to apply for leave in advance. Even Chancellor Kong can't say anything, right? Li Zishuan kicked Ching Chumo's butt and said unhappily, "You brat, why don't you go to heaven?" Chapter 177. Xianer, come over here. After lunch, Madame Li mysteriously waved for her son to come over. Li Zishuan curiously walked over and asked, "Mother, what's the matter?" Madame Li lovingly smiled and said, "It's a good thing. Yesterday, your father asked a matchmaker for Han Yushi's birth characters. Mother will go to Xiandu Temple tomorrow and find a Taoist priest to match your birth characters." Li Zishuan was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Really? That's great. But mother, what if that Taoist priest says that Yushi and I are not compatible?" "Bah, bah, bah, nonsense. My son is handsome and elegant. The Han family's daughter is also dignified and beautiful. She is educated and reasonable. How can the two of you not be compatible?" Madame Li lightly knocked on her son's head and said unhappily, "Oh, then I'll have to trouble you, mother." Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and rubbed his head. He replied and quickly went to the West Court. "Shall she come over?" In the main hall of the West Court, Li Zishuan sneakily asked Xiao Shi to come in. "Young master, it's still daytime. What do you want to do?" Xiao Shi looked at Li Zishuan and thought of something bad. Furthermore, Li Zishuan said those words last night. The servant girl immediately crossed her arms and looked at Li Zishuan vigilantly. She refused to go in. Now that Li Zishuan was about to get married, if he messed around with the servant girls, it was hard to guarantee that the future young mistress would not make things difficult for them. Although Xiao Shi had a good impression of Li Zishuan, she was very clear about what she should and shouldn't do. Li Zishuan stared at her and said, "What are you thinking? If you don't come in, I will definitely eat you up tonight." Oh, when Xiao Shi heard Li Zishuan say that, she knew that she was thinking wrongly. She quickly agreed and walked in. "Young master, what's the matter? Something big? Tomorrow, my mother is going to the Xuandu Temple to match Yushi and me. You should follow her and take the opportunity to give that fortune-telling Taoist some money. Let him pick something nice to say. Tell him that if he dares to talk nonsense, I will smash his Taoist temple." Li Zishuan finally got a wife who was as beautiful as a fairy. He didn't want these weird Taoist priests to cause any more trouble. Pucci. When Xiao Shi heard this, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and giggle. "Young master, how can you do this? Aren't you cheating?" At the same time, Xiao Shi was a little envious. If young master could care about her so much in the future, she would be willing to die. Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and snapped. "What's wrong with cheating? Those Taoists of the Jianghu were always talking nonsense. How many of them could be accurate? My master's fortune-telling was accurate, but he never told people's marriage. He would rather destroy a temple than ruin a marriage. Do you understand?" Actually, Li Zishuan was overthinking this matter. Normally, Taoists would match people's birth characters. Regardless of whether the man and woman were suitable for each other, they would usually pick something nice to say. Very few Taoists would purposely break up people's marriages. If that was the case, the grudge would be too big. It wouldn't be in line with their principle of keeping a low profile to make a fortune. Hence, most of the time, the so-called matching of birth characters was just a formality to let the elders feel at ease. Xiao Shi stuck out her tongue mischievously. She felt that no matter what she said, her young master was right. Hence, she stopped arguing and smiled. "All right, young master. Xiao Shi will do it tomorrow." Li Zishuan grinned and said, That's right, that's right. This is my family's good Xiao Shi." Xiao Shi blushed and ran out. She thought to herself that ever since the young master wanted to marry the young mistress, he liked to tease her and Xiao He more and more. Could it be that the young master had turned into a big pervert? If Li Zishuan knew what the little girl was thinking, he would definitely vomit blood. He was also a man. Every day, he would guard these two pretty little girls. He couldn't eat them, and he would occasionally say a few flowery words. How did he become a pervert? Strange Interest Pavilion Workshop. Ma Zhou was sitting in the study room in the backyard. He was leisurely drinking tea and reading a book. On the table beside his hand, there was a thick pile of books. The current Ma Zhou was not the same as before. Ever since Li Zishuan came that day, his position in the workshop had skyrocketed. He sat firmly in the second position. Furthermore, because he was an authentic, cultured person with great potential, his position in the workshop was faintly surpassing Faubert's. Therefore, he was naturally treated well now. There were even 2 servants outside the door who could be ordered around. He was really living a comfortable life. He was now reading the manuscript of The Legend of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality that Li Chengxian asked the eunuch to return. He was already working on a newspaper that Li Zishuan asked him to do last time. The stack of documents on the table was the recent major events in Chang, and that he had collected. He had also personally written the relevant manuscripts. Now that he was free, he wanted to read Li Zishuan's novel and see how the quality was. After all, Ma Zhou was very confident in his literary talent. He believed that if his article was published in the newspaper, it would definitely receive a lot of praise. However, he was not confident in Li Zishuan's literary talent. Ma Zhou was afraid that Li Zishuan's novel would be too lousy and drag down the overall quality of the newspaper. The beginning is so flat and straightforward. It doesn't pay attention to the rhymes. It's completely vernacular. How can this kind of article be presented? But what are the circles and dots in the middle used for? Why does it look like it's used for punctuation? This idea is not bad. Ma Zhou looked at the first chapter and couldn't help but say with a look of disdain. However, he was still very interested in Li Zishuan's punctuation. Forget it. Let's read the next chapter. After thinking for a while, Ma Zhou still patiently continued reading. Cultivation? The idea of this chapter is a bit interesting. Ma Zhou had never read a Xuanhuan cultivation novel. The first time he saw the world structure and the cultivation system, he couldn't help but be deeply immersed. At this time, he didn't care about the literary talent of the article. TSK. Exciting. This eternal spring art is so powerful. How did Li Xianan come up with it? Why is this bottle so strong that it can't be broken? This bottle has a great origin. It can actually accelerate the ripening of spiritual herbs. Won't Han, Li be able to level up quickly in the future? How did it end so quickly? At first, Ma Zhou was still disdainful of Li Zishuan's literary talent. In the end, he was quickly immersed in the novel and dreamlike plot. Unknowingly, he finished reading more than 20 chapters, and it was obvious that he was still somewhat unsatisfied. Although the beginning of the story is flawed, the more I read, the more exciting it is. The owner has completely created an unprecedented new world. It's really too novel and too interesting. Ma Zhou touched his chin and muttered to himself. After a while, he looked at the press release he wrote before and his heart wavered. Should I also write this article in vernacular? No, wouldn't that be too lacking in content? But I keep feeling that there's something missing. At this moment, Ma Zhou began to hesitate and feel conflicted. Forget it. I'll take it and ask the owner. Ma Zhou thought for a while and decided to personally listen to Li Zishuan's opinion. After all, the idea of this newspaper was originally proposed by Li Zishuan. Swordsmen are working so hard. Students who read pirated versions, can you come to QQ Bookstore and subscribe 2 chapters to support me? It's just a few cents. Give me some motivation to persevere. The results are too terrible. Chapter 178. In the afternoon, after Li Zishuan finished his nap, Xiaohe came over and told him that a middle-aged scholar named Ma Zhou had come to see him and was waiting in the main hall of the front yard. Li Zishuan nodded and walked to the front hall. He saw Ma Zhou wearing a high hat and a wide belt. He was immaculately dressed, looking like a scholar with an imposing appearance and an elegant demeanor. His attire almost blinded Li Zishuan's titanium alloy eyes. Was this still the sloppy man he saw yesterday? TSK. Mr. Ma's style is almost as elegant as mine. If you walk on the street, won't other young ladies be stolen by Mr. Ma? Li Zishuan looked at Ma Zhou and couldn't help but sigh. Ma Zhou was about to get up and salute Li Zishuan. When he heard this teasing, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, Ma Zhou was not a person who couldn't make jokes. He smiled and half-joked with Li Zishuan's words. Lord Zhu, I'm now the brand of Qitsu culture. No matter what, I have to dress up a little. Otherwise, won't I embarrass Lord Zhu? In history, the Zhengguan dynasty was full of talents. Ma Zhouguan was able to rise so quickly because, in addition to his talent, he was indeed outstanding in his conduct and conduct of the world. Ma Zhou was a smart man. He paid more attention to art when remonstrating, unlike Wei Zheng, who was straightforward. If Ma Zhou's strategies for governing the country were great wisdom, then these trivial details could only be regarded as petty cleverness. However, it was this petty cleverness that smoothed the relationship between him and Li Shimin. So Li Shimin always treated him well. In the 12th year of Zhengguan, Ma Zhou was promoted to the secretary of the secretariat and was transferred to the secretariat to work. Li Shimin said to the attendants on his left and right, "If I don't see Ma Zhou later, I'll miss him." From this, it could be seen that Ma Zhou was humorous, not inflexible, and knew how to conduct himself. Basically, he could make everyone like him. Li Zixuan was also amused by Ma Zhou's words. "Haha, Mr. Ma is really humorous. I wonder what brings you here today." Upon hearing this, Ma Zhou stopped smiling. He took out a stack of manuscripts from his sleeve and handed them to Li Zixuan. He said with a smile, "Lord Zhu, I have compiled the recent decrees issued by our dynasty, as well as some major cases and strange stories around Chang, and into the kind of press release you mentioned. I'm here today to let you see if it's okay." Li Zixuan was surprised. "So fast," Ma Zhou said embarrassedly. I was a little excited yesterday when I thought of the grand plans Lord Zhu mentioned, so I—" Only then did Li Zixuan notice his panda eyes. This guy probably didn't sleep last night, right? Ma Zhou's outfit today was too eye-catching, so Li Zixuan ignored his facial expression. "Brother Ma, you're well-read. You should know the principle of combining work and rest. No matter how great your ambition is, it still needs to be accumulated step by step. It's impossible to achieve it overnight. Your body is the most precious asset." He seemed to remember that in the history books of his previous life, Ma Zhou died very early. That was why he said this. He didn't want Ma Zhou, a talented and humorous person, to die young. In fact, in history, Ma Zhou suffered from chronic diabetes for a long time. He couldn't recover after a long period of treatment. In the end, he died on the 9th day of the first lunar month in the 22nd year of Zhengguan. He was 48 years old. Ma Zhou heard Li Zixuan's words. Although he was touched, he still didn't take it seriously. He waved his hand and smiled. "Thank you for your concern, Lord Zhu, but I'm still in the prime of my life. Every time I think of doing something big with Lord Zhu and leaving my name in history, I feel excited. It's just that we met too late. I've wasted so much time in the past few years." Ma Zhou's words were sincere. Scholars all had the ambition to govern the country and pacify the world. Whether it was the dictionary or the newspaper, it was a great promotion for the education of the Tang Empire. At first, Ma Zhou came to the workshop to earn money to buy wine. But since he knew about Li Zixuan's ambition to let everyone in the world be able to afford to study, he felt that his body was full of vitality and he had more motivation to work. Li Zixuan insisted, "Work can be done slowly, but you can't ignore your health. Brother Ma, listen to me. Rest when you need to. The Tang Empire will only get better and better in the future. There are many things that Brother Ma needs to do and witness. Later, I'll instruct your servant to remind you to rest on time every day." Ma Zhou spread his hands and said helplessly, Okay. I'll listen to Lord Zhu." Li Zixuan nodded with satisfaction. Only then did he look at the manuscripts written by Ma Zhou. On Taizong Shu, in ancient times, those who were not subjects were all subjects of His Majesty. Those who were not under His Majesty's control were under His Majesty's control. For China, there was no such thing as the Turks, and the great and great Khans were helpless. Yintua and Tiela were in charge of the prefectures and counties. Gaochang and Tuhun were in charge of sweeping the land. Only the Goryeo were ordered by the successive generations, and Mok was poor. His Majesty reprimanded them for being traitors. Zhengguan law interpretation, it said, "Man, 3 talents and 10,000 things are divided. Qi contains spirit, and man is the leader. Li Yuan is the minister of justice, and he is punished for political and religious reasons. His sentiments are unscrupulous and foolish, and he knows Shun is ruthless. If he is big, he will mess up his area. If he is small, he will show his style. If he does not establish a system, he will not be heard of before. The murderer of the massacre of a family of 6 in Xinfeng County has been arrested by the authorities. In the spring of the first year of Jingguan, Lu Yuanyi's family was robbed by thieves. The family of 5 fought back with all their might, but the thieves were brave and brutal. Li Zixuan looked at the pieces of news in his hand. Sometimes he frowned, sometimes he was deep in thought. After a while, he finally finished reading all of them. Then he put down the manuscripts in his hand and looked at Ma Zhou. "Brother Ma, I have a few suggestions. See if they are feasible. If you think they are not, we could discuss it in detail." Ma Zhou nodded and said, "I have the same idea. Lord Zhu, please tell me. I am all ears." Li Zixuan stretched out a finger and said, "First, I think that you should add punctuation marks in all of your manuscripts. This will make it easier for the readers to read. As for what punctuation marks are, I believe that Brother Ma has already roughly understood part of it from my record of a mortal's journey to immortality. Later, I will systematically teach you the usage of all punctuation marks." Ma Zhou cupped his hands and said, "I have indeed seen these marks before. At that time, I also guessed that they were used to punctuate sentences. I didn't expect it to be true. In this way, if we add these marks to the newspapers in the future, it will indeed have a good effect." Li Zixuan agreed and said, "Exactly. The same sentence can be punctuated in different ways. Each way of punctuation represents a different meaning. Such examples can be found everywhere. Only by introducing punctuation marks can we reduce a lot of unnecessary ambiguity." Chapter 179. In the main hall of the Li estate, Li Zixuan continued to speak with assurance. He extended a second finger and said, "Secondly, I think we need to figure out the audience of the newspaper. With the publication of the Tang Dynasty dictionary and the promotion of pinyin, the number of literate people will far exceed the current number of scholars. These people don't read much, so they definitely won't be able to understand profound classical Chinese. I think that in the future, the newspaper should mainly be written in the vernacular. But considering that the dictionary and pinyin haven't been fully promoted yet, we can do a preliminary experiment. We can divide the newspaper into a few sections. One section will be called Literati Interaction. In this section, everything will be written in classical Chinese. Here, the scholars can express their interpretations of the imperial court's decrees and different viewpoints from different schools of thought. This section will become a paradise for literati to communicate. The other sections will be written in the vernacular." Ma Zhou couldn't help but nod and say, "That's a good idea. Before I came, I also considered this problem." Li Zixuan continued, "Thirdly, regarding the current news, Brother Ma, you can put it into a separate section. This section is mainly used to record the recent strange events, but the writing style can't be so serious. The title can't be as rigid as what you wrote. You have to write it in a relaxed and humorous way to attract people. Don't the people read the newspaper for fun and novelty?" Ma Zhou worked so hard to write the news article for so long. Many of the words were carefully crafted by him. In the end, he was criticized as worthless by Li Zixuan. He was a little embarrassed, and his stubborn temper almost flared up again. But this time, he forced himself to hold it back. He was a little unconvinced and asked, "Then Lord Zhu, how do you think I should write it?" Li Zixuan smiled. He could also see that Ma Zhou still had a little temper. But it was normal for literati to be arrogant. He didn't mind too much and said, "As for how to write it in a way that will attract people, Brother Ma has to figure it out yourself. But I can provide Brother Ma with an example. For example, you can start by writing, 'Why did a 90-year-old woman die naked on the streets? Why did hundreds of female donkeys scream in the middle of the night? Why did the underwear of the courtesans of 100 Flowers Tower get stolen? Who was the perpetrator of a serial rape and killing of sows? Why did the old nun's door get knocked every night? Was it a person or a ghost? What was behind the accidental deaths of hundreds of female dogs? Behind all this, was it the distortion of human nature or the decay of morality? Was it the eruption of sex or the helplessness of thirst? Stay tuned for the 8th issue of the Tang Daily. Li Zixuan was really full of surprises. Before he could finish, Ma Zhou felt dizzy and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Where's your integrity? My Lord Zhu, where is your integrity? Ma Zhou felt that he had no integrity when he put down his pride as a scholar and shamelessly went to work in the workshop. However, he did not expect that there would be a scholar who was even more shameless than him. Ma Zhou now had some doubts. Was he too thin-skinned before? Lord Zhu, is it really okay to write like this? Will we be drowned by the saliva of all the scholars in the world? Ma Zhou looked like he was going to vomit blood and asked gloomily. It was as if he was saying to Li Zixuan, "Are you sure you're not King kidding me?" Li Zixuan deliberately ignored Ma Zhou's expression and said matter-of-factly, "Why not? Brother Ma, don't you think that the people will be more interested in reading if you write like this? As for the scholars' saliva, Brother Ma, you don't have to worry at all. If they want to scold us, let them. Only when there is controversy can we become more and more famous. Their saliva will only make our newspaper more popular. Moreover, in the future, our newspaper will definitely have the absolute power of public opinion. When that time comes, I'll see who dares to scold us." Ma Zhou wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. Why did he feel like he had fallen into a pit of fire? Moreover, it was the kind of pit that was 10,000 meters deep. He could not jump out even if he wanted to. Lord Zhu, do you really want to write like this? Ma Zhou hoped that Li Zixuan would change his mind and not make things so shocking. Li Zixuan insisted, "Yes, just write in this style. There's a trace of exaggeration in the humor. Once people start reading, they can't stop even if they want to." All right then. Ma Zhou could only agree helplessly. He cursed in his heart. Is it a trace of exaggeration? It's simply too exaggerated. Li Zixuan thought for a while and continued. Then the novel section at the end of the newspaper will be called Dahua Jianghu. In the early stage, I'll use my legend of a mortal's journey to immortality to cover it. Every issue will have 4 chapters serialized. Later on, if the Ministry of Culture receives some high-quality novels, then they can be serialized together. Brother Ma, what do you think of my legend of a mortal's journey to immortality? Can I put in the newspaper? Ma Zhou said awkwardly. Ahem, of course. This Ma's also read this novel. Although the beginning is a little plain from the last few chapters, this Ma has never heard of the huge world built in this novel and the cultivation system mentioned in the book. This Ma is simply unheard of. It is really too novel. I believe that when the time comes, there will be many people who will like to read it. Li Zixuan said proudly. Of course, the story will only get more and more interesting. Brother Ma, you definitely won't be able to imagine it. Then when the novel is published, will the author write your name, Lord Zhu? Ma Zhou suddenly thought of a very important question. Li Zixuan pondered for a moment and smiled. There's no need to write my real name. I'll give myself a pen name. In the future, everyone who contributes can give themselves a pen name. My pen name will be Leather Knight. At the same time, he said silently in his heart, Master Forgetful, I'm sorry. I'll just copy this novel from you. I'll copy someone else's next one. Don't mind me. I'll be taking your novel to the Tang Dynasty. You're welcome. Ma Zhou's face was full of doubts and asked, Lord Zhu, what's the meaning of the 3 words Leather Knight? Li Zixuan looked up. His gaze seemed to penetrate the roof, through the sky, and rushed out of the horizon. He sighed deeply and said, This is because I miss a person, a very great person. Without him, perhaps I wouldn't be who I am now. 2017. In a small rented house in Tiandu, a failed web novel author was crazily typing in front of the computer. Behind the Word document, there was clearly a program code that he had just finished running. Suddenly, he sneezed 3 times. Achoo! 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 Suddenly, the computer screen was full of saliva. He took a piece of tissue paper to wipe the computer and cursed. F***. It must be that old woman, the landlord, scolding me again. I just told her to pay the rent a few days later. Did she have to do this? Li Mansion. When Ma Zhou heard Li Zixuan's strange words, he couldn't help but be puzzled. Isn't Lord Zhu's father called Li Jingma and his mother called Yi Yuzhu? There isn't anyone called Leather Knight. Then why did Lord Ju say that without Leather Knight, there wouldn't be him? Could it be? Majo suddenly opened his eyes wide in horror. He felt that he had discovered something incredible. "Huh!" Li Zixuan saw this and slammed the table. He said angrily, "What are you thinking?" When my master was alive, he said that he liked the 3 words Leather Knight very much. Majo was obviously thinking the wrong way. Li Zixuan had no choice but to make up an excuse to avoid any trouble. Majo replied with an "oh," half believing and half doubting. Then, seeing that he had achieved all his goals today, he proposed to leave. Li Zixuan waved his hand helplessly, telling this bastard with a big brain to scram. Chapter 180. Jinda, Jijia, Pharmacist. Jinda, why are you all here? The afternoon of the second day, Niu Jinda, Cheng Yao Jin, Li Jing, and Yuqi Jingda arrived at the Qin Manor, giving Qin Xiong a fright. "Huh, second brother, we heard that Shaoxian was going to give you a blood transfusion, so we wanted to come and observe." Cheng Yao Jin smiled happily. Among them, he had the deepest relationship with Qin Xiong. They were all friends who had gone through life and death together. Thinking that there was hope for his good brother's illness, Cheng Yao Jin felt even better than killing hundreds of enemies. That's right. I've never heard of such a strange thing like stealing blood to save people. Today, I'm here to broaden my horizons and see if this method can be used in the army in the future. Shu Bao, please don't blame me for coming uninvited. Li Jing stroked his beard and smiled reservedly. Qin Xiong waved his hand and said, "Pharmacist, you're treating me like an outsider. Come in and sit. Housekeeper, serve tea." The group sat down in the front hall under Qin Xiong's instructions. Maids and servants came to serve tea. Madame Qin also knew that Li Zixuan was coming today to treat her husband, so she waited in the front hall. Yu Qigong took a sip of tea and looked at Qin Xiong and asked, "Shu Bao, your complexion looks much better than usual. Can you still get on a horse and fight?" Compared to half a month ago, Qin Shubao's complexion was indeed much better. At the very least, he looked more like a healthy, normal person. Qin Xiong waved his hand and said with a smile, "Jingda is joking. Although I can move freely now, but if I get on a horse to fight, I'm afraid I won't have the strength to do so. I can't compare to Jingda. Jijia, you two have great martial strength." Niu Jinda comforted him. Shu Bao has been on a horse all his life. It's good that he can live peacefully. Now that my Tang Empire is going to be peaceful, Shu Bao can stay at home and enjoy life. Isn't that a good thing in life? Cheng Yao Jin also patted his chest and said, "Yes, yes, yes. I can fight in the war." "Second brother, you can't fight with me." Qin Xiong shook his head. He looked to the north and sighed. The Turks in the north have yet to be wiped out. How can this old man retire at home in peace? Li Jing frowned and said, "Shu Bao, you don't have to be too worried. The Turks aren't united. Last year, they took advantage of our great Tang's internal weakness to send their troops to the Wei River. As long as we prepare for war for 2 years, we won't be afraid of the Turks." "Master, Daoist Sun and Daoist Li are here." At this moment, a servant came in and cupped his hands. Qin Xiong stood up and said excitedly, "Please, please." A moment later, Li Zixuan and Sun Simiao walked in together. Behind Sun Simiao was Hu Jingjing. Li Zixuan had also asked the young lady at the door. Hu Hanyun and Hu Guiyuan's injuries had all been treated and they had already returned home. They had originally wanted to go to the Li family to kowtow and thank Li Zixuan for his kindness, but Li Zixuan had been in class at the time, so they gave up on the idea. After the few people in the room greeted Sun Simiao, Cheng Yao Jin began to scold Li Zixuan. "Good lad, you made all of us wait for you. You're getting more and more arrogant." Li Zixuan cupped his hands and apologized. "Please forgive me, uncles. I was late because I had to prepare some things. I didn't think it through." Li Jing stroked his beard and smiled. "Jijia, don't scare children. As long as you can cure Shu Bao's illness, what's wrong with us waiting for a while?" Li Zixuan looked at Li Jing and cupped his hands in puzzlement. "May I ask who this uncle is?" In his opinion, The person who could sit here and chat with Cheng Yao Jin and Qin Xiong must be a big shot. So he asked. Niu Jindao pointed at Li Zixuan and said with a smile, "Ha, you don't even know the famous pharmacist Li." Li Zixuan was surprised. He didn't expect to meet such an awesome person. He hurriedly bowed and said, "It turns out to be the Tang Empire's military god. I didn't recognize you. Please forgive me, General Li." Li Jing's face changed slightly. He waved his hand and forced a smile. "Military god? Don't talk nonsense. You can also call me uncle like you called Jijia and Shubao." Li Zixuan hurriedly called him Uncle Li again. Li Jing said, "Xiao Xian, go and treat Shubao. I'm just here to watch the fun. Don't waste time here." Li Zixuan hurriedly cupped his hands and said yes. At this time, Sun Simiao had already checked Qin Xiong's pulse. Li Zixuan stood aside and waited for the results. He greeted Mrs. Qin with his eyes. Mrs. Qin gave him a kind smile. Half an hour later, Sun Simiao stood up and sighed to everyone. General Qin's internal injuries are gradually getting better. However, the qi and blood he lost in the early years has not been completely recovered. It has been a long time since the last time I checked his pulse. I'm afraid that less than 10% of it has been recovered. General Qin is approaching middle age, and his qi and blood are not as vigorous as a young man's. I'm afraid that it will be difficult to recover all the qi and blood he lost through the power of the medicine. Everyone's face darkened, and they couldn't help but feel disappointed. Sun Simiao looked at Li Zixuan and continued, "Xiao Xian, let's try your life-prolonging skill." Cheng Yaojin agreed. Yes. Xiao Xian, let's draw blood. See if my blood is suitable." "Sir Li, please see if my blood is suitable." At this time, the housekeeper of Qin's mansion who was waiting on the side bowed and begged, "Lord Li, please take a look and see if our blood is compatible." Suddenly, there was a roar of nearly 100 people outside the house. Qin Xiong and the others turned pale with fright. They hurriedly walked to the door and saw nearly 100 Qin clan generals neatly lined up in 10 rows. Everyone cupped their fists and knelt on one knee. This was standard military etiquette. The news that Li Zixuan was going to give Qin Xiong a blood transfusion had already spread among the servants of Qin's mansion. Correspondingly, they already knew about the theory that Li Zixuan had mentioned last time. How could they not help when their master was in trouble? Moreover, most of them had accompanied Qin Xiong in his early years and fought all over the world. Later, because of the battles, they were left with disabilities. Qin Xiong saw that some of them were lonely and had no one to rely on, so he took them in as his family soldiers. After so many years, he had been supporting them. Therefore, their feelings for Qin Xiong were deeper than anyone else's. Moreover, according to Li Zixuan, taking a little blood wouldn't kill anyone. What was there to be afraid of? At this moment, Qin Xiong felt as if he had returned to the battlefield. These were all brothers who would die for him. At this moment, he couldn't help but tear up. "Zhuang Qi, what do you want to do by bringing them here? Hurry up and go back." "Family head, I, Zhuang Qi, did everything I did today willingly. If it wasn't for you, I would have starved to death on the side of the road. Now that you are in trouble, forget about taking a bit of my blood. Even if you want my life, I'm willing." The leader, Zhuang Qi, clasped his fists at Qin Xiong and said loudly, "Yes, master, we are all willing. We are all willing. Lord Li, please draw my blood. I have the most blood." When the other family soldiers heard Zhuang Qi's words, they all shouted out. In an instant, the front yard of Qin's mansion was filled with roars. Li Zixuan was also moved by the brotherhood on the battlefield. Just as he was about to step out and persuade Qin Xiong, he heard a heroic laugh from outside the door. "Ha! It is said that men on the battlefield are loyal. The family soldiers of Qin's mansion are all indomitable and loyal men. Please support me with a legal subscription. The author is about to vomit blood." Chapter 181. Following this forthright laugh, Li Er, dressed in a bright yellow uniform, strode in with large strides. Everyone was shocked and knelt down. "Your Majesty." Li Er waved his hand and laughed. "Rise, ha! Shu Bao, I heard from Qin Ke that Li Zixuan is going to give you a blood transfusion this afternoon, so I can take a look. Shu Bao, you won't mind me being an uninvited guest, right? Qin Xiong bowed. I wouldn't dare. Qin Xiong was both gratified and happy that Li Er had personally come to see him. He had stayed out of the Xuanwu Gate incident last year because he did not want to participate in the tragedy of killing his brother and seizing the throne. It had nothing to do with his position. He had always been on Li Er's side. But from the rewards of the officials after the incident at Xianwu Gate, everyone thought that Qin Xiong had lost the favor of the emperor and would no longer be valued. Usually, only Cheng Yaojin and Yo Jinda, these former battle brothers, were willing to come to the Qin Fu. Now, that Li Er came out of the palace to see Qin Xiong, to a certain extent, it dispelled some of the rumors. Qin Xiong didn't care about these rumors, but he was still happy that Li Er came to see him personally. Don't just stand there, continue. Don't delay Shu Bao's treatment because of me. Li Er didn't rush everyone to do what they were supposed to do. Li Zixuan looked and said to Qin Xiong, Uncle Qin, since these men are willing to donate blood for you, why don't we start the blood test first? I said before that taking a small amount of blood is not harmful to the human body, but beneficial. I'm willing to use my life to guarantee this. Qin Xiong patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and said, I believe you. Then he looked at the group of family generals in front of him and said loudly, All of you get up. This old man owes you a favor today. Zhuang Qi stood up and grinned. Family head, you're too serious. Li Zixuan had them stand in a row, but he didn't need so many people. He planned to let them leave once he found a suitable blood type. He first used a porcelain bottle to take the blood of the 10 people and put their names on the bottle. Then, he took it back and tested it with Qin Xiong's blood. After a while, the results came out. Uncle Qin, Zhuang Qi, and Mei Wenhua have the same blood type as you. You can use their blood. Li Er and the others watched from the side and clicked their tongues in wonder, but did not interrupt. In the courtyard, Zhuang Qi heard Li Zixuan's words and immediately grinned proudly. Haha, you're so uncultured. Don't fight with me this time. Lordly, you could just use my blood. Your uncultured body is not as strong as mine. A lame veteran in the first row was immediately unhappy. He scolded, Zhuang Laoqi, you're F*** looking down on us veterans. If you're not convinced, come out and fight with me. Qin Xiong could not help but scold. All of you shut up. Don't be rude in front of His Majesty. Immediately, the two of them quieted down. Li Er waved his hand, indicating that he didn't care. He had been in the army for a long time and was already used to such fights. Li Zixuan and Sun Simiao looked at each other and stepped forward. Uncle Qin, just use Zhuang Qi's blood. You can ask the others to leave. Mei Wenhua was indeed a little old. His own blood production ability was not enough. If he gave Qin Xiong blood, he would probably be finished. Qin Xiong nodded and shouted, Zhuang Qi, step forward. The rest of you can leave. Master, Mei Wenhua still wanted to fight for it, but he was glared at by Qin Xiong. Everyone came to a bedroom. Sun Simiao went forward to check Zhuang Qi's pulse to see if he was healthy and if he had any medical history. This was what Li Zixuan had told him when he came. He could not let Qin Xiong get infected after the blood transfusion and have other diseases. Zhuang Qi obediently allowed himself to be checked. His expression did not reveal any impatience. After a while, Sun Simiao nodded at Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan ordered Zhuang Qi to lie on the bed. He also asked someone to bring a cushion for Qin Xiong to lie on the ground. This strange arrangement shocked Zhuang Qi. He quickly stood up and said that he wanted to lie on the ground and let Qin Xiong lie on the bed. Li Zixuan slapped him. If they really lay down like that, who will be the one to transfuse blood in the end? After the two of them were in position, Li Zixuan asked them to roll up their sleeves. He picked up the cotton swab, which was actually a ball of steamed coarse cloth tied to the front of a thin stick. In this era, cotton was still a rare ornamental flower. It was not popularized as a crop. Li Zixuan could not find cotton in a short time, so he could only do this. He dipped the cotton swab in alcohol and smeared it on the two people's arms. Suddenly, an unusually strong smell of alcohol filled the air. Cheng Yaojin sniffed hard. He was so greedy that his saliva almost flowed out. He thought to himself, this kid is not honest. He is such a good thing, and yet he is still hiding it. Although Li Zixuan liked to drink, he was more concerned about the purpose of Li Zixuan's action. He thought for a long time, but still could not figure it out. He could not help but frown deeply. Sun Simiao did not have any scruples. He directly asked, Xiao Xin, what do you mean by smearing alcohol on their arms? As Li Zixuan busied himself, he replied, it's disinfecting. There are some small bugs on the surface of a person's skin that can't be seen with the naked eye. This strong liquor can kill them. In fact, when someone was injured in the army, their wound would become infected because of these small bugs in the air. Although Sun Simiao did not know what air was, he understood the general meaning. He nodded thoughtfully. Li Jing's eyes lit up. He could not help but ask, if this kind of alcohol is used in the military, can it greatly reduce the death of injured soldiers? Li Zixuan nodded and said, in theory, it can. Li Jing looked at Li Er excitedly. Li Er nodded at him, indicating that they should finish treating Qin Xiong's illness first. After disinfecting, Li Zixuan found the blood vessels on Zhuang Qi's arm. Looking at the thick needle, he gritted his teeth and stabbed it in. Zhuang Qi's body trembled, but he did not cry out in pain. Li Zixuan waited for the air in the needle to be exhausted. Then, he inserted the other end of the needle into Qin Xiong's arm. Because of the difference in height, the blood slowly flowed through the needle into Qin Xiong's body. Everyone in the room held their breaths and stared at the blood flowing through the needle. They were witnessing the first case of blood transfusion in human history. Gradually, Qin Xiong fell asleep with a satisfied expression. Li Zixuan stared at the hourglass on the table. After a while, he nodded at Sun Simiao. The two went forward to remove the needles from Qin Xiong's arm and use cotton swabs dipped in alcohol to press on the wound. Then, Li Zixuan stood up and started to pack up the tools. Of course, Mrs. Qin went forward to press on the wound on Qin Xiong's arm. As for Zhuang Qi, he acted as if nothing had happened. After pressing for a while, he threw away the cotton swabs. Instead, he sniffed his arm for a while and muttered, good wine. A few old soldiers in the room gently carried Qin Xiong to the bed. They saw that his breathing was even and he was sleeping soundly. He was not awakened by the commotion outside. Mrs. Qin stood to the side, happily wiping away her tears. Sun Simiao went forward to check Qin Xiong's pulse again. After a while, he smiled and nodded at Mrs. Qin. This was clearly not the place to talk. After Mrs. Qin reacted, she apologetically called Li Er and the others to the front hall for tea. Li Zixuan wanted to leave after packing up, but Yu Qijingda picked him up like an eagle grabbing a little chick and brought him to the front hall. Chapter 182. Li Zixuan, can this strong liquor really prevent the wound from getting infected and suppurating, as you said? In the main hall of Qin's mansion, Li Er sat alone in the seat of honor while the others sat below in an orderly manner. Li Zixuan was tired for a long time and finally sat down to rest. When he heard Li Er's question, he really did not want to move, so he directly sat on the stool and cupped his hands to Li Er. Indeed, when my teacher treated the wounds of the farmers who were bitten by wild beasts, he would use strong liquor to disinfect them. If your majesty does not believe me, you can test it in the Imperial Medical Department first. Li Er nodded. Li Jing then stood up and cupped his hands to Li Er. This old subject earnestly requests your majesty to introduce this method of disinfection into the army. Every year, the death rate of wounded soldiers in the army is as high as 70%. Many good men did not die on the battlefield, but died from infection. This old subject is truly distressed. Li Er quickly said, I also understand the situation that the pharmacist mentioned. Li Zixuan, how much of this strong liquor do you have in your winery? He wanted to directly take the method of brewing the strong liquor into the imperial court's possession. After all, this strong liquor had become an extremely important strategic resource in terms of its effect. However, there were still shares of the Cheng family in it. If he did so, it would not look good. Li Zixuan suddenly had a good premonition. He felt as if he was being targeted by a tiger. He cautiously said, "Your Majesty, this strong liquor has no other use except for disinfection. Therefore, the winery only has a few bottles. I made on the spot." Lier stared and said, "What do you mean by no other use except for disinfection? You really don't know the severity of the situation. Just by disinfection, you can save the lives of many good men in the Tang Empire." He shook his head and muttered, "Can this liquor be brewed in large quantities and supplied to the army?" Li Zishuan thought for a while and asked, "How much of this disinfection liquor does the Tang Empire need every year?" Lier did not know this. He looked at Li Jing and threw the question out. Li Jing was also a little confused. He knew how many injured soldiers there were every year, but how would he know how much strong liquor was needed? There are about 15,000 injured soldiers in the army every year. Little Xian, calculate how much hard liquor you need. Li Jing could only throw the question to Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan calculated carefully. After a while, he said, "Your Majesty, I have roughly calculated that the army needs to store about 600 liters of liquor every year to ensure that it is enough." Lier nodded and slapped the table, saying, "Good. Then your winery will provide 600 liters of hard liquor to the Ministry of War every year." As for the price, Li Zishuan rushed to say, "At least 8 rounds per liter." Lier was so angry that he almost slammed the table. "Nonsense. You have the nerve to earn money from saving the lives of those soldiers." Li Zishuan felt wronged and said, "Your Majesty, this is really the cost price. This disinfection liquor is more than twice as strong as the immortal drunken wine. Think about it. The immortal drunken wine is already sold for 5 rounds per liter. If you sell it for less than 8 rounds per liter, I will really go bankrupt." What he said was not entirely a lie. In modern times, alcohol was indeed very cheap, but industrial alcohol was generally obtained through chemical synthesis, not through fermentation and distillation of grains. In the Tang Dynasty, 8 rounds per liter of medical alcohol was really not expensive. Lier said angrily, "Nonsense. How can this little liquor make you go bankrupt? Don't be unreasonable. 6 rounds per liter." Li Zishuan almost vomited blood. This Lier was really not a good person. He was a robber. Cheng Yaojin stood up and snorted, "Your Majesty, the cost of this liquor is indeed very high. 6 rounds per liter is really going to be a loss." The Cheng family had shares in this winery, so of course Cheng Yaojin would jump out and complain. Lier saw that Cheng Yaojin was also pretending to be pitiful, and he suddenly had nowhere to vent his anger. "Fine, 8 rounds per liter it is. If you dare to cut corners, I will teach you a lesson." Lier flicked his sleeves and left. All the big shots had seen what they wanted to see, and Qin Xiong was now sleeping. It was not appropriate for them to stay any longer, so they all said their goodbyes. Only Li Zishuan, Sun Simiao, and Cheng Yaojin were still there. Sun Simiao looked at Madame Qin and said, "General Qin's pulse is stable, and his body is no different from a normal person. Madame Qin, please don't worry." Madame Qin sincerely thanked him. "Thank you, Dr. Sun." Sun Simiao waved his hand, looked at Li Zishuan, and said, "Xiao Xian, I have never heard of the small insects in the air that you mentioned. Can you tell me in detail some other day?" Chinese medicine focused on the 5 qi and 6 qi, the balance of yin and yang, and the integration of heaven and man. Li Zishuan's theories had really broken Sun Simiao's understanding of medicine. He seemed to have seen the door of a new world waving at him. Li Zishuan said with a smile, "Of course. If you want to hear from me one day, I will tell you everything. In fact, these small things that can't be seen with the naked eye can be seen with some tools. When I make this tool in the future, I will invite you to come and see it together." Sun Simiao said in surprise, "There is such a strange thing? That's great. As the saying goes, hearsay is false, but seeing is believing. If you can really make that kind of tool one day, you must send someone to inform me. Even if I'm thousands of miles away, I must rush back to take a look." Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Don't worry, Taoist Sunday. I will definitely inform you." Only then did Sun Simiao say goodbye with satisfaction. who actually helped Sun Simiao carry the medicine box obediently. She smiled sweetly at Li Zixuan and waved goodbye. Then, she turned around and left with Sun Simiao. When Li Zixuan saw that everyone had left, he also wanted to say goodbye. However, he heard Madame Qin say, "Xiao Xian, don't be in a hurry to leave. Annie has something to say to you." Li Zixuan stopped and respectfully said, "Auntie, please go ahead." Madame Qin said with a smile, "Why are you still standing? Sit down. Sit down and talk." Li Zixuan obeyed and sat down. Cheng Yaojin was about to leave, but when he heard Madame Qin ask him to stay, he sat down with Li Zixuan. Madame Li looked at Li Zixuan and couldn't help but say with emotion, "Xiao Xian, your Uncle Qin's illness is all thanks to you." Otherwise, Li Zixuan quickly waved his hand and interrupted, "Auntie Qin, please don't say that. The Qin and Li families are like family. This is what I should do." Madame Qin smiled happily and said, "Haha, you are right. I heard that you're going to marry Yushi. This girl is my adopted daughter. From now on, our two families will really be one family." Cheng Yaojin's eyes widened. At this time, he patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and laughed. "Ha, no wonder you are so good to Han Tianhu. It turns out that you're interested in his daughter. You are so cunning." Li Zixuan's forehead was full of black lines. Did this old guy even know how to speak properly? Chapter 183. When Mrs. Qin heard Cheng Yaojin's nonsense, she glared at him angrily. Cheng Yaojin often chatted and laughed with Qin Xiong, but he still had some respect for this sister-in-law. Sensing Mrs. Qin's angry gaze, Cheng Yaojin laughed awkwardly. Then he consciously removed his left hand from Li Zixuan's shoulder and returned to his seat. Mrs. Qin smiled in satisfaction. She looked at Li Zixuan and said with a loving expression, "Between you and Yushi, one is Auntie's nephew and can be considered talent. The other is my adopted daughter and is also naturally beautiful. You two are a match made in heaven. Auntie is very happy that the two of you can be together. Yushi, this girl, her mother passed away early and is also a pitiful child. Our Qin family can be considered half of her family now. I love her very much. In the future, you can't bully that girl. Otherwise, I won't let you off." Sweat. Li Zixuan finally remembered that Mrs. Qin could be considered half of his mother-in-law. He hurriedly cupped his hands and promised, "Don't worry, Auntie. Yushi and I are truly in love. After we get married, I'll only love and dote on her. I won't dare to bully her." Mrs. Qin heard this and beamed with joy. "Ha, that's a good boy." Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Li Zixuan finally left the Qin family. Although Mrs. Qin was only half of his mother-in-law, she wasn't easy to deal with. Li Zixuan's ears almost grew calluses from listening to her nagging. When Cheng Yaojin left, he gave him a hand and walked out of the Qin family. "Huh, how are you going to thank me this time?" On the street, Cheng Yaojin patted Li Zixuan and laughed loudly. Li Zixuan thought for a moment and said, "This time, I have to thank Uncle Cheng properly. Otherwise, our winery would have to pay at least 1,000 strings of coins for the 600 liters of liquor His Majesty ordered." "Haha, of course. Kid, you have to treat me to a good drink on your wedding day. Use the liquor you disinfected Shu Bao today." Cheng Yaojin laughed proudly. There were only a few people in the Tang Empire who could face Li Zixuan directly. Li Zixuan almost knelt down when he heard Cheng Yaojin's words. "Boss, you dare to drink medical alcohol? You must be tired of living." Uncle Cheng, you can't drink this disinfectant liquor. You have to tell His Majesty to strictly forbid the soldiers from drinking disinfectant liquor. This stuff can kill people," Li Zixuan said solemnly. Only now did he realize that he had forgotten to tell Lier about this matter. Most of the heroes in the army loved to drink. It was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be drunkards who had designs on this medical alcohol. If this person didn't die on the battlefield and instead died of alcohol poisoning, then Li Zixuan's sin would be great. Hearing how serious his words were, Cheng Yaojin stopped smiling and asked, "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. All right, I believe you. Your worries aren't unfounded. I will write a letter to His Majesty tomorrow to clarify this matter." Li Zixuan heaved a sigh of relief and cupped his hands. Thank you, Uncle Chung. Li Residence, West Courtyard. Xiao Shi, come over quickly. Li Zixuan saw Xiao Shi holding a piece of cloth and looking like she was going to the front courtyard. So he quickly called out, "Young master, what's the matter?" Since they were outdoors, Xiao Shi wasn't worried that Li Zixuan would do something beastly in broad daylight. Thus, she quickly walked over and asked, "Xiao Shi, what did the Taoist priest say when my mother went to the Taoist temple this morning?" Although there was a legitimate reason, cheating wasn't something to be proud of. Li Zixuan asked softly. Xiao Shi smiled and replied, "Young master, so you are still worried about this matter? Don't worry." Xiao Shi secretly gave the Taoist priest 200 coins when old madam wasn't paying attention. Afterwards, the Taoist priest told old madam that young master and young madam are a match made in heaven. Young madam is a blessing for her husband. After marrying her, young master will definitely be promoted and the Li family will have many children and grandchildren. Old madam was overjoyed. When old madam came back, she said that she will go to the Han family tomorrow. After a few days, she will set an auspicious date and young master will be able to get married officially. Yeah, that's great. Xiao Shi, you did well. When I, young master, get married, you will be greatly rewarded. Ha! Li Zixuan resisted the urge to carry Xiao Shi and twirl her around. He could only clap his hands and laugh excitedly. Xiao Xian, who is this Xiao Ming? Big brother, I must beat this son of a bitch to death. The next morning, Li Zixuan had just finished teaching everyone and was preparing to go home for lunch when Cheng Chumo chased after him from behind and asked angrily. Li Zixuan was confused by the question and asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "Bah, this kid is really hateful. Look at him pouring water into the pond and then pouring water out. Does this son of a bitch have nothing better to do? Isn't he making things difficult for me? Old Cheng? Also, this kid is always forgetful. He even forgot to bring his things to school. It's fine if he went back to take his things, but he actually asked me, 'Old Cheng, when will he meet his mother?' How the hell am I supposed to know? Also, you see," Cheng Chumo pointed at the few math problems that Li Zixuan had said in the textbook and kept complaining about Xiao Ming's crimes. Looking at this guy's crazy look, he was probably tortured by these few problems. Li Zixuan was sweating profusely in his heart. Why was this idiot's brain always wired differently from other people? Wasn't it because he wanted to save time and effort when he was setting the questions? So he directly changed all the application questions to Xiao Ming? Does this guy have to be like this? Haha, Chonyo, how can you understand it like this? Xiao Ming is just a code name. The reason why Mr. set this problem is to let us learn how to solve this kind of problem, not to let you care about who the problem is. Qin Huayu, who was following behind, heard Cheng Chumo's funny words and couldn't help but help Li Zixuan to explain with a smile. Li Zixuan gave this guy a kick. He said unhappily, "Did you hear what Huayu said? You don't think about proper things and only think about crooked ways. If you continue like this, I'll pay a home visit to the Chung residence and talk to Uncle Chung about your recent studies." Although Cheng Chumo didn't know what a home visit meant, he roughly understood after hearing the second half of the sentence. He immediately jumped up and said, "F***CK, Xiao Xian, are you still my brother? How can you do something so immoral? What? You can't win a battle of words, so you want to fight? Come. We brothers haven't sparred in a long time. F***CK, only an idiot would spar with you." After following Li Zixuan for so long, this guy already knew how to call him an idiot. Cheng Chumo was really afraid that Li Zixuan would want to spar with him, so he immediately ran away after saying that. Chapter 184. At noon, Li Zixuan finished his meal and prepared to go back to the west courtyard to take a nap. This guy was more carefree than some of the modern civil servants. He only worked half a day and rested for 2 days every 5 days. There was no one else like him. Perhaps even Li Er's quality of life was not as good as his. As soon as he arrived at the west courtyard, he saw Lan'er following him. Li Zixuan rubbed his head with a headache. With this little devil around, how could he sleep at noon? "Lan'er, what's the matter?" Yes. Lan'er quickly nodded. The little girl looked around and then mysteriously pushed Li Zixuan into the room. She hurriedly asked, "Brother, have you noticed anything wrong with Iron Egg recently?" Lisa Schwan patted his clothes that were messed up by his little sisters pushing and shoving. When he heard this boring question, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. What'd be wrong? Of course there is. Brother, as a master, why don't you care about your disciple at all? Lisa Schwan said angrily. How do you know that I don't care? Don't I check on his progress every day? No. I'm saying that you don't care about Iron Egg's inner feelings. Lisa Schwan was a little confused by Lan Er's words. He asked impatiently, Lan Er, what do you want to say? Just say it. You're really unqualified as a master. Haven't you noticed that Iron Egg has become more and more silent recently? He even talks to me less often. Lan Er pouted and said with a face full of dissatisfaction, Isn't this normal? Iron Egg has to practice and go to school. How can he have so much time to chat with you? That's not it. Iron Egg used to practice and go to school. But every afternoon after class, he would come and play with Lan Er. But recently, after Iron Egg came back, he didn't look for Lan Er anymore. Brother, go and check on Iron Egg at night. What I said is true. Lan said anxiously. The more Lisa Schwan listened to his little sister, the more mysterious she became. But in order to avoid being pestered, he could only agree. Okay. I'll go and take a look tonight. Hee, thank you, brother. Lan smiled sweetly. Lisa Schwan's heart melted when he heard that. He thought to himself that his little sister was becoming more and more coquettish. After Lan achieved her goal, she did not cause any more trouble in the west courtyard. Lisa Schwan's ears finally had some peace. He moved the recliner to the entrance where he could feel the cool breeze. Then, he put on the eye mask that he asked Shi to sew for him and lay down on the recliner, taking a beautiful afternoon nap. After an unknown amount of time, Lisa Schwan felt a few drops of cold water dripping on his face. He subconsciously wiped his face, thinking that it was raining. He instantly woke up and saw Lan holding a dripping towel, laughing mischievously beside him. Oh, Lan, didn't I just promise you? What else do you want? Stop fooling around. Let me sleep for a while more. Lisa Schwan was about to throw a tantrum when his afternoon nap was interrupted. However, when he saw his little sister's innocent smile, his temper instantly died down. However, he still said unwillingly, Brother, don't sleep anymore. Faubert sent someone over to say that the new car you asked for is ready. Quickly accompany Lan to sit in the beautiful new car. Lan grabbed Lisa Schwan's arm and kept shaking it. She was like a little sparrow chirping in Lisa Schwan's ear. Lisa Schwan was just thinking that if Lan was still here, he would tell her a ghost story to scare her away. However, when he heard that the new car was ready, he immediately sat up and said excitedly, Lan, where's the new car? Has it been sent over? It's still in the workshop. Faubert said that he wants you to go over and see if there's anything that needs to be changed. Brother, bring Lan along. Previously, Lisa Schwan had told her about the new car a few times. According to Lisa Schwan's description, Lan had always been looking forward to the new car. Now that she heard that the new car was ready, how could she hold herself back? Lisa Schwan laughed heartily and stood up. He rubbed Lan's head and said with a smile, All right, I'll bring you along. Ignoring Lan's cheers behind him, Lisa Schwan went out and asked Shi to get a basin of water to wash his face. He instantly felt refreshed. Sambao brought the buy over. Lisa Schwan carried Lan and got on the horse. He laughed loudly and said, Let's go look at the car. I can't afford a BMW, Mercedes-Benz, or Ferrari in the modern era. Then, I'll make my own luxury car in the Tang Dynasty. Lisa Schwan thought proudly in his heart. Accompanied by the clatter of the horse's hooves on the ground, the siblings arrived at the workshop in a short while. When they walked into the workshop, they saw a huge four-wheeled carriage that was about 12 feet long and 3 feet wide. The sides of the carriage were angular, and there were some exquisite carvings. The dark red paint on it gave people a sense of low-key luxury. Compared to the current 4-foot-long and 2-foot-wide ordinary carriage, this luxury car looked like a huge beast from afar. Moreover, it had 4 wheels, so it looked more stable. Lisa Schwan was very satisfied just by looking at its appearance. Only then did he have the time to look around the carriage. He discovered that other than Uncle Fu, Yin Xiaoning had also come today. This guy had not been seen for a while, so he did not know where he went. Hey, Brother Xiaoning is here today. It's rare. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Brother Xiaoning, how have you been? Li Zishuan held Lan Er's hand and walked over quickly to greet Yin Xiaoning. Yin Xiaoning said with a bitter face, "The workshop has been so lively recently. Of course, I want to come and take a look." However, some time ago, His Majesty ordered the Ministry of Works to mass-produce curved plows and promote them to other provinces and counties. The Ministry of Works is short of manpower. My father recruited temporary craftsmen from the public and took me to be his supervisor. I was released today and heard that you made something good, so I came to take a look. Li Zishuan looked at this poor kid sympathetically and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled and said, It's good that you're here. You're the technical director of our workshop. Without you, our workshop's progress has slowed down a lot." Yin Xiaoning's mechanical talent was undeniable. He was even better than Faubert. In the future, he could become a god. With such an awesome engineer, Li Zishuan was very assured about the workshop's future development. Yin Xiaoning could not help but roll his eyes. He had just jumped out of the pit that his father had dug for him. Why did he feel that he had jumped into Li Zishuan's pit? This kid was obviously treating him as a coolie. However, he still had 10% of the workshop's shares. This counted as working for himself, right? Yin Xiaoning's mood improved a little when he thought of this. He was too lazy to care about Li Zishuan. He came over and pulled Lan. He smiled gently and said, "Let's go, Sister Lan. Brother Xiaoning will take you to see the new carriage." Okay. The two of them jumped directly into the carriage. Li Zishuan was immediately stunned and hurriedly cried out, "Hey, this is my carriage." After saying that, he hurriedly chased after them. Chapter 185. After entering the carriage, Li Zishuan looked at the interior furnishings. Even though this was designed by him, he was still shocked. He saw two single sofas placed on both sides of a small long table. Due to the hot weather recently, Faubert specially placed a bamboo mat on top of the sofa to make it look cooler. Li Zishuan secretly praised Faubert's quick-wittedness. Behind the long table, there was a long sofa. It was about 2 feet wide and 8 feet long. It looked like it was just enough for one person to rest on. If there were 2 people, then they could only lie on top of each other. Li Zishuan suddenly had an unhealthy thought in his mind. Faubert was quite thoughtful. He even placed a bamboo mat on top of the sofa to make people want to lie on top of it and sleep. In the innermost part of the carriage, there were 2 compartments side by side. Li Zishuan pushed open the door and looked inside. He found that one was the bathroom and the other was the water storage room. The water storage room's container was a large rectangular iron can. It looked like it was specially designed to save space. The iron can could store about 70 to 80 pounds of water. There was an iron pipe at the bottom of the iron can. There was a simple switch at the top of the iron pipe. Although it was not as professional as the modern faucets, its functions were similar. TSK, perfect too perfect. Li Zishuan looked around and couldn't help but exclaim. Other than the lack of air conditioning, sound system, and electric lights, the interior of the carriage was perfect. It was simply a must-have for traveling with a family. Oh my God, Xiao Xian, you have sinned. Such a luxurious carriage. Only a rich person like you can enjoy it. Yin Xiaoning couldn't help but exclaim while touching the sofa and the window. Hee, brother, Lan will sleep here tonight. Lan seemed to have discovered a new world. She lay on the sofa and rolled around while laughing happily. Li Zishuan was speechless. This girl was really a little overlord. Young master, is there anything else that needs to be changed in this carriage? At this moment, Faubert had also boarded the carriage. He chuckled at Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan waved his hand in satisfaction. No need, Faubert. I'm very satisfied with this carriage. Let's pull it back now and see if it's comfortable to run on. Faubert nodded and said, All right, this old man will go and saddle the young master. 15 minutes later, Bai was able to pull this massive object with the strength of a single horse under the astonished gazes of the workers in the workshop. The wheels of the carriage began to roll slowly, and it spun faster and faster. Dubai snorted joyfully, indicating that it was so easy. Faubert arranged for a worker from the workshop to sit in front of the carriage and drive the horses. He also sat in the carriage with Lisa Schwan to feel the performance of the new carriage when it ran. Wow, little Xian, how come this car doesn't feel bumpy at all? This is too amazing. Or has the roads in Chang and become so flat? Yin Xiaoning nestled comfortably on the sofa and looked at the passing scenery outside the window. Suddenly, the tea on the table didn't spill. He sat on the sofa and carefully felt it. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when he didn't feel any bumpiness at all. Lisa Schwan drank a mouthful of water contentedly and smiled proudly. Of course it's because our carriage is good. Don't you know what the roads in Chang'an are like? What do you think? Little brother's carriage is awesome, right? Yin Xiaoning said excitedly. Awesome, of course it's awesome. Quickly tell me, how did you do it? Won't you understand when you go back to the workshop later and ask Faubert to look at the blueprint? Lisa Schwan didn't want to explain it to Yin Xiaoning again. He was busy right now. Busy with what? Isn't this nonsense? Look, that young lady outside the carriage window is so pretty. Most importantly, she's wearing very thin clothes. Unfortunately, Big White Speed was too fast. Lisa Schwan was only able to catch a glimpse of her chest and couldn't see it anymore. Inside the carriage, Faubert saw Yin Xiaoning's unsatisfied look and explained with a smile. Young Master Yin, some special shock absorbers have been added to the bottom of the carriage. On the other hand, the sofa we're sitting on is also very useful for shock absorption. As for the detailed structure of the interior, you can only go back to the workshop to look at the blueprint. Hearing this, Yin Xiaoning nodded thoughtfully. Wow, husband, look at that carriage. Why is it so tall and so big? A white-clothed lady in her 20s saw the huge carriage that just passed by in the middle of the road. She hurriedly pulled the man beside her and exclaimed, "It's really big. I've never seen such a huge carriage before. Husband, should our family buy a carriage like this too? Otherwise, you'll have to accompany me back home every year. It'll be so hard on you." The man was speechless. He wanted to say that it wasn't hard on him, but looking at his wife's pleading face, he couldn't help but soften his heart. He hurriedly nodded and agreed. The pretty lady in white cheered happily. She leaned over to the man's ear and whispered, "Husband, you're so nice. I'll change my style of serving you tonight." The man stiffened slightly to show his respect. He looked excited and laughed. "Look, such a big carriage can be pulled by only one horse. It's really amazing." Unlike the cheating couple, this person who spoke was obviously slightly knowledgeable. Yes, not only that, you see, this carriage actually has 4 wheels. It's really stable when it runs. It doesn't feel like it's swaying at all. TSK, this carriage's appearance is so beautiful. I wonder where it's sold. I really want to buy one. Squire Wang is really generous. This carriage isn't something that ordinary people like us can afford. This carriage came from an Elaine. Maybe it was made by the workshop of Strange Interest Pavilion. Oh, then it's really sold. That's great. Lisa Schwan and the others sat in the new carriage and left under the envious eyes of the passers-by. Suddenly, Ba, whose carriage is so arrogant that it choked me with a mouthful of dust. Damn, this carriage's size is too coquettish. There's actually such an arrogant person in Chang'an. Hey, the carriage in front, stop. Chung Chumo, who had just returned home after class, was caught off guard by the rolling carriage on the roadside. He choked on the dust and was instantly furious. There was actually someone more arrogant than him in Chang'an. He immediately ran wildly and chased after the carriage, shouting all the way, "It's Virgo!" Yin Xiaoning stuck his head out of the window and looked back. Then he turned back and said to Lisa Schwan, "Damn, Yin Xiaoning, it's you. Stop the carriage quickly. I'm going to rob you. This carriage is mine." Ching Chumo's eyes were sharp. He recognized Yin Xiaoning the moment he stuck his head out of the window. He immediately shouted like a bandit. In the carriage, Lisa Schwan was speechless. He shouted outside, "Stop the carriage!" Then the carriage slowly came to a stop. Chung Chimo cheered, and quickly ran to the front of the carriage. With a leap, he jumped onto the carriage. Wow, Xiaoxian or Faubert, you're all here too. Haha, then I won't be polite. Gee, what's this stool made of? It's so damn comfortable. Chung Chumo acted as if he had returned home. He didn't treat himself as an outsider at all. He sat on the sofa and couldn't help but sigh. Lana was pushed to the side by this guy. The little girl was unhappy. She stood up and pulled Chung Chumo's cheek. She said unhappily, "Humph. Brother Chonyo is really thick-skinned." Ha ha ha. Chapter 186. Little Xian, your carriage is so comfortable. Why don't you give me one? Although Chung Chumo was pulled off the sofa by Lon, he was not angry at all. He wandered around the carriage like Granny Lou in the Grand View Garden, looking left and right and touching everywhere. After a while, when he carefully looked at the luxurious interior of the carriage, Chung Chumo could not help but be shocked. This kind of carriage was the standard for rich playboys like him. It would be so flashy and cool if he drove it out. Thus, he licked his lips and begged Li Zixuan for it. In your dreams. This carriage is the only one in the world. Li Zixuan curled his lips. Don't. Little Xian, why don't you ask your workshop to make a few more? Chung Chumo urged. Li Zixuan squinted his eyes and said, I can, but this carriage is expensive. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but can you afford it, Chonyo? Didn't this guy always say that he was poor? Li Zixuan did not believe that he could afford a luxury carriage now. Damn, you're looking down on me. As long as you have this kind of carriage, I can afford it. Tell me, how much is it? Chung Chumo was immediately unhappy. His family had shares in the winery. With the sales of the Drunken Immortal and Gentle Beauty, the Chung Chumo had also earned a lot of money. Correspondingly, Chung Chumo's pocket money had increased recently. This guy was now quite wealthy and was very confident. Li Zixuan looked at this jokester's face and could not help but want to attack him. Thus, he said, no bargaining, only 999 strings of cash. He had asked Faubert about the cost of this carriage on the way here. Currently, the average horse carriage sold in the market cost between 200 to 500 strings of coins. However, due to the addition of a lot of advanced technology, such as shock absorbers, roller bearings, iron plates in the compartment of the carriage, and a separate toilet, the cost alone was as much as 400 to 500 strings of coins. Li Zixuan set a price of 999 strings of cash, which wasn't considered expensive. This price was equivalent to buying a Porsche in modern times. With such excellent performance, such a domineering appearance, and such luxurious interior, Li Zixuan believed that even if it was sold for more than 1,000 strings of cash, there would definitely be rich people rushing to buy it with gold bricks. However, Chung Chumo was not a rich person. He only had a small amount of wealth. When he heard such a crazy price, Chumo's mouth, Little Xian, you're robbing me. This carriage is not made of gold. Is it expensive? Chonyo, if you think it's expensive, our workshop will release a cheaper version of the carriage. There's no sofa like the one you're sitting on. There's also no water storage where you wash your hands. It's only 666 strings of cash. If you still think it's expensive, we will release a beggar's version. There's no sofa, no water storage, no toilet, and no iron plates in the compartment. We'll sell it for 555 strings of cash. How about that? You can afford it, right? Li Zixuan sipped a mouthful of water and said slowly, Damn, I don't want a beggar's version. Chung Chumo was furious. This beggar's version was not a good thing, just from the name. He, Chung Chumo, would rather not buy this carriage than make a beggar's version and embarrass himself. Ahem, Little Xian, money is just a worldly possession. Do we need to be so calculative? If your workshop makes another one, give it to me. How about it? If the hard way did not work, he could only use the soft way. After all, everyone knew that Chung Chumo was thick-skinned. So what? Since money is a worldly possession, why don't you give all your pocket money to me for safekeeping, Chonyo? Oh, no way. Chung Chumo expressed that he was not an idiot. Why would he give away his money to someone else? Damn, Little Xian, if you don't give me one, I'll go to your house and not leave. I'll eat and drink your food. Let's see if you lose out. Cheng Chumo saw that Li Zixuan was unmoved by force or persuasion, so he had no choice but to use his ultimate move, shamelessness. Yin Xiaoning and Faubert were trying hard to hold back their laughter. Lana did not have so many scruples. The little girl was so happy that she kept giggling and kept saying, "Brother Chonyo, you're shameless." Li Zixuan was also speechless. He had never seen such a shameless person. Up to you. Our house is short on rooms recently. We can only sleep in the woodshed. Damn, you're so unrighteous. You're the one who wanted to stay. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I see that Uncle Chung and Uncle Chin are getting old, and it's not convenient for them to go out. I plan to give each of them one of these carriages in the near future. Cho Ox, you can stay in our woodshed. Little Xian. Before Cheng Chumo could finish cursing, he heard the second half of Li Zixuan's sentence and finally understood that Li Zixuan was just teasing him. He didn't even bother to get angry and hurriedly corrected himself. Little Xian, you're such a good brother. Huh? After laughing for a while, Yin Xiaoning asked seriously, Little Xian, do you want to give this carriage a name? In the future, when we sell it, it can be better differentiated from other normal carriages. Li Zixuan thought about it and agreed. Just as he was about to speak, Cheng Chumo interrupted, Of course. Xiaoning is right. If it were up to me, we should give it a more impressive name. Only then can it match such a perfect carriage. How about we call it Little Tyrant? Isn't this name domineering enough? After saying that, he proudly winked at Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan cursed in his heart. Little Tyrant? This guy really knows how to think. Nothing much. I've already thought of a name. But call it this. As he said that, he dipped one finger in water and wrote 3 letters on the table, BMW. Cheng Chumo went over and was stunned. What does this mean? Yin Xiaoning frowned and muttered, Is this pinyin? Li Zixuan raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, Oh, Brother Xiaoning actually knows pinyin? Yin Xiaoning shook his head and said, His Majesty mentioned in the morning court a few days ago that you invented something called pinyin. It can help children learn to read. He also showed it once in court. I also heard it from my father when he came home. The shape of your characters is very similar to what my father described that day. Li Zixuan nodded in realization. He wasn't surprised at all as to how Li Er knew pinyin. If it wasn't Li Tai who said it, then it was that little fatty Li Changxian. What pinyin? Little Xian, just tell me what it means. I'll see if it's better than my Little Tyrant. This guy still couldn't forget about his Little Tyrant. Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and said, These 3 characters mean don't touch me. Cheng Chumo grinned and laughed. I thought it was a good name. It's really not as good as my Little Tyrant. Yin Xiaoning didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wondered. That's right. Little Xian, isn't this name a little too weird? Li Zixuan insisted. Just use this name. Ugly Ox, if this carriage could speak, do you know what it would say to you? Cheng Chumo touched the exquisite carvings on the carriage wall and replied, What would it say? F***CK off, don't touch me. F***CK. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.